Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most memorable stories ever told through FNAF fan games. From emotional character arcs to shocking twists and mysteries that stick with players long after the credits roll, these games prove that great storytelling can come from anywhere. Some of these stories are just as memorable as the games themselves, so let's dive into them. What is the most disturbing thing you've ever seen while playing a FNAF game? That's a serious question. I really want you to think about it. I'm sure a lot of people are already thinking of the third tape from the original Dormitibus, but that's not quite what I mean. I mean, what's the most disturbing thing you've seen? Literally, seen with your own two eyes, or one if you're half blind. Let me cut to the chase. The game we'll be talking about today is the Fazbear Tomb, made by Maroon Fox, who, fun fact, I've actually known for many years, and he reached out to me to ask me to voice some of the characters in this game. Rest assured, that's not why I'm talking about it. The Fazbear Tomb has some of the most shocking imagery I've ever seen in any FNAF game ever. So let's waste no time and jump right into it. With nowhere better to start than night one is where we will start, and we actually get to walk into the building instead of just being dropped right into our office, which I always think is pretty cool. Starting outside, we enter the building and walk into the dining area where we can see Bonnie and Freddy. Chica is also on stage, you can tell because you can see her feet, but unfortunately the rest of her body is blocked by Freddy's enormous belly, which is just not ideal. Moving to our office, we sit down and I notice something immediately which I think is really cool. That being, instead of turning like in most FNAF games, you can actually turn 360 degrees inside of your office. It's such a small touch, but I really like it. Moving on to the tools at our disposal. There really isn't much to be said here. We have cameras and 3 doors to our office. 2 of the doors can be held shut, but the third door cannot, instead allowing us to play dead outside of it. Why can't we play dead next to all of the doors? That I don't really have the answer to. Oh yeah, we can also shine our light in all of the doorways, so that's nice too. We get a phone call from the phone guy, pretty typical stuff. He gives us the normal spiel of how to deal with the characters, which might make you think they'll all be activated on this night, but you'd be wrong. For some reason, we're told how to deal with every character on night 1, even though only 1 threat is introduced on this night. Not really sure why, but whatever. Oh yeah, and one more super cool thing about this game, the phone guy is played by me, so that was super fun.
To make sure he doesn't get you, you must... Well, that is all the training for today. Good luck on your shift and have a killer time at Freddy's.
There's 3 doors. What do you mean? What do I have to do? Also, why am I'm talking to myself? It feels weird. Moving on to the 1 threat this night introduces, that being Bonnie, who is as basic can get. Bonnie's goal is to attack the 1 door in your office with no actual door on it. He'll wander around the cameras before getting there. You can flash your light to double check that he is indeed there, and once you know he is, just play dead. Phone guy says to do so for 10 seconds. Kind of odd how he just knows how long you're supposed to do that for, but I'm gonna look past it. Something I'm not a super huge fan of in this game is just how long the nights are, especially night 1. You'll notice that each minute in this game is about 1.5 seconds in real life. And with a night like night 1 where only Bonnie is active, and at the same time during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually never even had Bonnie come to my door and I was playing Raid Shadow Legends the whole time. It just leads to this night feeling like a slog. But after making it to 6 AM, we complete the night and we can talk about the post-night 1 minigame, which may just be one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in my life. During this minigame, we have to take apart Bonnie because there's been complaints of a bad odor coming from him. We start by opening his head, removing his arms, and cracking open his torso. Removing the plate, we see this. That's right. We actually get to see the corpse of one of the missing children stuffed inside of Bonnie. Truly one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen in a FNAF game before. I don't think any other game that I know of has ever actually directly shown you the bodies of the children. So needless to say, seeing this was crazy. After that shocking reveal, we get a very odd cutscene. A large amount of words are said, but I can't really make out most of it. I'll play it here with subtitles of what I could make out, but I'll need your guys' help in the comments to decipher everything.
But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well?
Night 2, here we are. Let's just say action from these robots picks up quite a bit on this night. Night 2 only introduces one new threat, that being Chica, as I'm sure you could have guessed. And I'm gonna be honest, Chica brings up a really big glaring flaw that this game has. That being that the gameplay is boring as fuck. But let's explain what Chica does first. Chica will move around the cameras until making her way to your second door. Once she approaches, you can flash your light to check she's there, and if she is, hold the door closed until you hear her go away. This is also the first night I actually had Bonnie attack me, and something I noticed about these two is just how long it takes for both of them to leave your door. It's like a solid 10 seconds, at least. Which, yes, I know the phone guy said, but I didn't think he literally meant it. But can you notice the issue this game already has? Both Bonnie and Chica do the exact same thing. And while sure, you could argue that Bonnie and Chica do the same thing in a lot of games, but when the cast of characters is so small, I think that should make you more inclined to make everyone do something unique. This franchise has been around for over a decade. I would like to see the community do something different, and I feel like this game tries to hide the fact that everything is the same. Sure, you have 3 doors, but 2 of them are just a close them when someone is there mechanic, and the other is a play dead mechanic, which by the way is literally exactly the same as holding the door closed, except there's no animation, the screen just turns black. And this is what I mean. It feels like the game is trying to make you think that Bonnie has a different mechanic from Chica because it calls it something different. But in reality, you're just holding control for both of them, so it feels a bit disingenuous. But on the other hand, the character AI has definitely ramped up on this night. During night 1, I was never attacked by Bonnie the entire time. This time around, I was attacked by him a good handful of times, and Chica tried to rail me a couple of times too. So at least during this night, I couldn't play another game at the exact same time like I could on night 1, which is a good sign of progress. Oh yeah, I should probably mention the phone call on this night too, since it is pretty interesting. It seems like a previous night guard was able to intercept the phone's connection. Don't ask how, just accept it. He talks about how the robots are out to kill. We already knew that. And he explains Foxy and Freddy's mechanics, which is good since the phone guy on night 1 cut out before he could finish talking about Freddy and how he worked. I'm obviously not going to tell you how to deal with Freddy and Foxy right now since they aren't even active at this point, so let's just move on to the post-night 2 minigame. Something I want to quickly preface is that technically these are not post-night minigames, they're technically pre-night minigames, but I'm so used to talking about the minigames after talking about the night. Oh, just know that this minigame I'm about to talk about isn't a post-night 2 minigame, but is really a pre-night 3 minigame. Who really cares though? It's all in the same order. In this game, we play as a very slow, fat child. Not based. The most horrendous, creepy-looking 8-bit Spring Bonnie I've ever seen in my life appears to tell us he has a gift for us. A very special one. We follow him through 2 rooms and see a gift box on the ground, but Spring Bonnie is nowhere in sight. Upon approaching the box, Spring Bonnie sprints at Mach 46 in our direction and presumably murks us, ending the minigame. So, not nearly as interesting as last night's minigame, but maybe this showed what happened just before what we saw in that last minigame. Or who knows, maybe this is one of the other dead children altogether. Right now it's hard to say, but let's continue on to night 3. On night 3, I was expecting one new character to be introduced, since it seems we're only going to be getting the 4 characters from the first FNAF game. Introducing one every night makes sense to me. But no, we have 2 threats to talk about on this night. So let's start with the least interesting one, Freddy. Freddy works, quite literally, in the exact same way as Bonnie and Chica, with the exact same attack pattern and the exact same way of dealing with him. He will attack your 3rd door, except he doesn't like to be flashed by your light. So if you ever do, he'll kill you instantly, even if you close the door directly afterwards, which doesn't make sense. So this brings up a question of how you're supposed to know when Freddy is there. Well, this game tells you that you'll be able to hear Freddy breathing when he's outside of your door. However, I was unable to hear the breathing, ever. Or, if I was able to hear the breathing, I was unable to tell it was breathing, since there are so many other fucking random noises that happen constantly throughout this game. You wanna know why I never heard the breathing sound effect? I checked the code of this game myself, and yeah, it's literally never programmed to play the breathing sound. Here is the code for the breathing sound. You see that start sound, pick random 1 to 4? There are 4 breathing sounds, and this plays one of those at random. You'll notice that these 2 blocks aren't attached to anything, and I never moved them. By the way, there is nothing that triggers these 2 blocks. This is all of the code for Freddy reaching your door. You'll notice a few weird things about it. That it starts by running a broadcast for Bonnie arriving. Spoiler alert, I have no idea why it's called Bonnie Arrive. The only thing this broadcast does is run a function in another sprite that plays footstep sounds. The other weird thing you'll notice about this code is that, yes, it actually does start sound, but not sounds 1 to 4. Instead, sounds 5 to 10. Well, what are sounds 5 to 10? You might ask. Well, they're footstep sounds. All of them. Sounds 5 through 10 are all footstep sounds. But why the fuck would you even need to play footstep sounds if right before that block you have the Bonnie Arrive broadcast that plays fucking footstep sounds? And why are there breathing sounds in this game that are never used, pretty much making it impossible to know when Freddy is ever at your door? I have no idea. And yes, by the way, I checked everything in the AI management code, and nowhere besides those 2 blocks that are detached and never called that I showed earlier does the code ever call for sounds 1 through 4 to ever be played. I have no idea what's going on. But worry not, I found a strategy for dealing with Freddy. We know because of the Bonnie Arrive script that whenever any character shows up at the door, we'll hear footsteps. Well, whenever I heard footsteps, I'd check Bonnie's door and Chica's door, since I could safely flash my light on them. If I didn't see either of those 2, then I'd know it has to be Freddy who's at my door, and, fun fact, Freddy doesn't appear to make footstep sound cues when he leaves either, so that's just great. Anyways, let's talk about the other threat this night introduces, Foxy. Foxy is pretty simple, but he is different from the other 3, thankfully. Foxy is in Pirate's Cove. Occasionally, throughout the night, he'll start humming like he tends to do. When he does, all you have to do is go to his camera and flash him with your camera light a few times and he'll close the curtain. So he doesn't even really do what normal Foxy does. Not that that's an issue, just thought I'd point it out. So, here's what the core gameplay loop boils down to right now. Start the night, literally sit there and do nothing until you hear Foxy humming or footstep sounds. Deal with Foxy if you hear him, and if you hear footstep sounds, check Bonnie, then Chica. Deal with either of them if you see them, and if you don't see them, close Freddy's door until you hear the next sound cue. Repeat for 8 fucking minutes, since each minute in this game is a second and a half, and you'll beat the night. Meaning we can move on to the post-night 3 minigame, technically pre-night 4 minigame. This is just a cutscene, but a creepy one at that. The marionette box opens, and the marionette crawls out with the most disgusting sound I've ever heard. She offers us a gift box and says that if we take it, we'll be gifted new life, and that he'll never be able to hurt us again. This tells me that we're the soul of a child in this cutscene, and of course, the marionette is reanimating us. We accept the gift, and the marionette crawls back into its sticky-sounding box, and we move on to Night 4. Night 4 adds nothing new to the gameplay loop. However, it is where I noticed a plethora of bugs in this game so horrific it's hard to describe. And pretty much every single bug stems from Freddy and the fact he will literally just ignore your door. He will also sometimes not play his footstep sound cue when he gets to the door. Oh yeah, and this part isn't a bug, but multiple characters can attack at the same time, guaranteeing that you lose the night because of RNG. That sounded rather loud. Good thing I went and checked. I said, good thing I went and checked. Fuck! Okay, well, you can't put Bonnie and Freddy there at the same time, dude. That's literally impossible. Impossible to deal with. Really, bro? Bonnie, walk off. What the fuck, dude? This game fucking reeks. Holy shit. It's a broken fucking mess. So yeah, doesn't that just look like a ton of fun? Because it wasn't. Anyways, since there isn't actually anything new to talk about, we can move on to night 5, which actually does introduce something pretty sick. But of course, before we talk about it, we need to talk about the pre-night 5 minigame. It's a pretty shitty, boring minigame. It's literally just the opening to FNAF 2. We're in the POV of Freddy, and we can look back and forth at Bonnie and Chica. Nothing super crazy or groundbreaking happens. We don't even see the marionette like we do in FNAF 2. Alright, who cares? Now we can move on to night 5. Well, let's just say that night 5 is something different, acting as this game's boss fight night. Every character we've seen up until this point has been disabled, and we hear the doors to the entrance of the building open, only to see none other than William Afton inside of the Spring Bonnie suit enter the building. That's right, the boss fight is with Afton. Why is he here? I have no idea. Is it ever explained to us why he wants to come kill us? Just a security guard that he himself likely hired? Not at all. But are we gonna complete it nonetheless? Yes. Honestly, calling this night a boss fight is pretty generous, as Afton does not do anything interesting or different from the rest of the characters. He can attack 2 of your 3 doors, and I'll talk about why in a bit. He can attack the 2 doors that, well, actually have doors. Obviously, when he's there, just close the door and he'll leave. However, Afton is faster than every other character we've seen so far, so tracking him on the cameras to tell which door it is he actually went to is really important, since you won't have time to check both doors without him killing you. Once again, like Freddy, even if the fucking door is closed. Hello? Ah, bitch! The door's closed, dude. The bugs in this game, they're unbearable. They're unbearable. Unbearable, dude. The door was closed. Now, you may be wondering, why doesn't Afton attack the door that Bonnie attacks? The one with no door? Well, that would be because it'd be impossible to defend yourself. You might think that that would make it the perfect door for him to attack, but from a gameplay standpoint, you really can't have him attack that door, now can you? Because he's not going to believe that you're already dead, since he's a human and not a stupid fucking robot. So this once again brings up my point, why even make the first door's mechanic playing dead? Why not just make it another door? It would literally function the exact same way, plus it would give Afton another means of attack and make his boss fight actually make a little bit more sense and slightly more difficult. But let's even look past all of that. What happens once you beat the night? Well, get this. Afton enters the fucking office anyways. So like, what is the point of whatever we just did? Clearly he has the power to be able to get into your office regardless. This kind of feels more like what we did throughout the night didn't really matter, which, by the way, the nights in this game are way too fucking long for how boring the mechanics are. A game like Next Week at Freddy's can have really long nights because there's a lot of variables that can change throughout the night to make it interesting for a long time. But when every single character in the game is dealt with in the exact same way, 8-minute nights are just completely unnecessary and make the game feel like a drag. But like I said, after you complete the night, Afton gets into the office and we get the following cutscene.
I found you at last. Did you really think you could hide? Did you really believe that you could cower away from me? I own you. I own this place. This is my kingdom, and I shall take you to my hell.
So there you have it. The marionette appears from the fucking ceiling. I guess she was just hiding up there the whole night. And she sets off the Springlocks in Afton's suit. Which, by the way, once again, I have no idea why he's even wearing the Springlock suit. The robots are not even activated on this night, so it's not like he's trying to disguise himself from them. If anything, wearing the suit you killed them in would probably just piss them off. I'm not really sure. William dies in front of our eyes, and the Fazbear tomb comes to a close. Overall, I think it's pretty clear that there's a lot I see wrong with this game. However, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's clear a lot more care went into the storytelling and the designs, which I can appreciate. I know Maroon Fox is already working on the second game, but if you're watching this, Maroon, which I'm pretty positive you are, you need to fix the problems I mentioned in this video before you release the second one, because this game was incredibly frustrating and it did not need to be. When you think of the typical Five Nights at Freddy's game formula, what usually comes to mind? Well, probably being stuck in one spot, unable to move, having characters bombard your doors, and only having a small amount of tools you can use to defend yourself. Occasionally, we'll find a fan game that introduces an interesting new mechanic. And of course, every now and then we find a free roam FNAF game that really, most of the time, feels like its own game that just uses FNAF characters. The game we'll be talking about today takes the FNAF formula and completely flips it on its head, giving you the opportunity to decide how long the nights are, and even introducing useful upgrades along the way. The game we'll be talking about today is Teelerland, a game I've been asked to talk about quite a few times, and a game I actually intended on covering sooner, but due to a bunch of other interesting fan games I've wanted to talk about, I've just been pushing this video off. But today, here we are to talk about it. So strap in and join me as we dive into the depraved world of Teelerland. Teelerland begins by putting us in the shoes of David Artell. Years back, us and our brother opened an amusement park called Teelerland. After a few years of running, the park shut down and Teal and David went their own separate ways. Years after the shutdown, we get an unexpected call from Teal. All he tells us is to find him at the park. So, not knowing what's going on, we make our way back to Teelerland, and this is where the fun can truly begin. Entering the park, we walk around and explore a little, finding some lore pages and oh shit! The fuck was that? In typical horror media fashion, as the main character, I'm going to choose to completely ignore what I just saw and chalk it up to myself seeing things. Continuing to search around the park, we eventually find a pile of garbage bags that look very out of place. Moving them, we find a hidden trapdoor. So what better choice to make than opening it and climbing straight down blindly instead of, oh, I don't know, going back home to our family and sleeping like a normal person? Of course, climbing down a ladder in a FNAF game isn't as simple as it sounds. Instead, it's made into a minigame very reminiscent of the vent crawling section from Sister Location. Except this time around, there is actually a threat. Because yes, if you didn't know, you literally can't die in the vent section of Sister Location. That entire game is hot ass, and if you'd like to hear me talk about how bad it is in another video, let me know in the comments below. As we climb down the ladder, the first threat of this game is introduced. Teeler. As you climb down the ladder, Teeler can appear on either side. When he does, all you have to do is shine your flashlight at him and he'll go away. However, this game thought it would be really funny to make your flashlight have a startup time. So when you see Teeler, you'll kind of just have to awkwardly stare at him for 3 seconds while you wait for your flashlight to charge up and turn on, which just feels really goofy. So, now I have another question to ask you. How do you know a FNAF game is going to be really complicated before you even start? Well, in cases like Post Shift 2, it's walls of text explaining the mechanics that cause the game to feel so bloated it's not even fun. Well, what else? Let me tell you. There is quite literally nothing scarier than opening a FNAF game and seeing that there's a tutorial night. That's how you know the game you're about to play is going to have the most obtuse and random mechanics you've ever seen in your entire life, and Teelerland is no different. So, now's the time I get to explain to you the several tools at our disposal in a way that is hopefully not mind-numbingly boring. But hold up guys, I want to take a little break here to tell you that this video is sponsored by me. For those of you who didn't know, I have channel memberships. I would never ask anyone to do this as I don't even have any interesting perks attached, But if you really enjoy what I do and would like to support me a little bit extra, that's a great way to do it. Also, if you'd like to actually get something for your money in return, I have a merch store with some designs I commissioned from a fan. The same fan who actually drew these new character PNGs. So if you'd like to have my silly little demon character on your clothes, then that's a great place to go do that. And hey, if enough people end up liking that stuff, I will 100% get some more created in the future, and maybe even commission some more fan artists for some uniqueness in art styles. You can find the link to that in the description of this video. Sorry for the interruption, let's talk about Teeler Land. To begin, there are 3 rooms that you can occupy: your office, the hallway, and the supplies room. Each does exactly what you'd probably expect. The office is where you'll do your major important operations, the supplies room is where you do important side objectives throughout the night, and the hallway connects those 2 rooms. Simple. To start, we need to understand how it is you actually complete a night in Teeler Land, because it's not as simple as most FNAF games tend to be. Teeler Land uses a task-based completion system rather than a time-based one, except, once again, Teeler Land chooses to do something different than most task-based completion systems. The goal of Teeler Land is to lure all of the animatronics in the building into a bunch of holding cells, and the way we do that is by taking control of another animatronic that's in the supply room. So the first thing you need to do each night is walk to the supply room and put the animatronic together. Its body parts can be found in the hallway and in the supply room itself, and if you want to hear something awesome, these body parts can apparently teleport at will, because you will commonly walk through the hallway, see nothing, walk into the supply room, see an arm, then walk back into the hallway and find a leg just chilling on the floor. Where did it come from? You tell me. Anyways, once you attach all 3 pieces to the robot, it will leave to roam the building. At this point, you can go back to your office and begin to control it. So, who is the first threat during the first hour of this game? Well, that would be Teeler himself. Really, since you won't often come into direct contact with the characters in this game, and you don't deal with them in a typical FNAF way, the way I'm going to choose to talk about these mechanics is going to be different than most of my videos. In order to lure Teeler, you have to get within a 1 tile's range of him. On your computer, you will see several map tiles, and about once every second you can move the T-Lure robot you built from 1 tile to another. Throughout that night, Teeler will naturally move around the building, with the goal of making it to your office. By making T-Lure get close to Teeler, a lure meter will start to increase. However, it's not just as simple as standing right next to him. Teeler has the ability to infect the lure, meaning that if you make the lure stand in one spot right next to Teeler for too long, he will infect it. So all you really have to do is make sure you move back and forth while trying to lure him. If Teeler does infect your lure, you'll have to go back to the supply room and hack the firewall of the robot, I think. I don't really know what it is we're doing, I'll be honest. Basically, when the lure is infected, go to the supply room and open up your firewall. Inside, there will be a list of files with one of them infected. You can tell which one is infected because it will have the prefix Zanny_. All you have to do is click on it and boom, you'll be able to control the lure again. Anyways, back to luring. Once Teeler's lure meter is completely full, he will begin to chase your lure. This is when you need to get Teeler to one of the holding cells and lock him inside. Once you've done that, you can safely check off your to-do list and end the hour. But before we can talk about ending the hour, we have a few more important things to talk about. The first of which being your health. No one character alone will be able to end your run in 1 jump scare. Each character has a certain damage stat, and they will deal that number of damage to you upon jump scaring you. Typically, it's 2 jump scares and it's game over. However, you do have a med kit inside the supply room, so if you ever get injured, just go there and do like the protagonist from Resident Evil and fix your injury with a bandage. So that brings up the question, how do the animatronics actually damage you if you're constantly moving them around? Great question. As I've already said, Teeler's main goal is to get to your office, so you'll commonly find him moving to the bottom of the map, as that is where the hallway to your office is located. If he gets to your hallway, your lure won't be able to reach him, and you'll have to defend yourself to make him enter the main room once again. You do not want to encounter Teeler in your hallway. So, if you suspect he's there, before you walk into the hallway, you can look through the keyhole of the door to your office. If he's in your hallway, you will see his eyes staring back at you. If this is the case, then you will need to quickly stop looking through the keyhole and wait until you hear Teeler leave. If you walk into the hallway or stare at him through the keyhole for too long, then he'll grip your hips and make you bounce on a crazy style. One last thing to note about Teeler is that he is the slowest character to lure, making him by far the most annoying character we'll deal with throughout the game.
With enough effort, you can take control of anything. An ability far more powerful than any other.
Now, before we continue on to the next hour, we need to talk about possibly the coolest thing that this game does. Tealerland has upgrades that you can unlock and equip. Do these make sense from a story standpoint? No, not really. But is it cool nonetheless? Yes. Yes, it is. After each hour, you'll be able to access the perk menu. There are 6 perks for you to choose from. After completing an hour for the first time, you'll get a perk point. And you can get 2 additional perk points for completing the hard mode version of each hour. Which, yes, by the way, each hour has a hard mode version for you to complete. There's no real use talking about them since nothing besides the difficulty really changes, but I will mention one additional thing they add. Every time you go to the computer, you'll have to type in a 4-digit code. It's annoying, that's about it. Anyways, back to the perks. You have 2 rank 1 perks and 4 rank 2 perks. Rank 1 perks cost 2 perk points each, and rank 2 perks cost 4 perk points each. So it'll be up to you to decide how you want to distribute your points. However, there is a clear answer as to which perks are the best. Let's start by looking at the rank 1 perks. The first adds a longer lure infection cooldown when you use the firewall, meaning that it will take longer for your lure to be able to be infected again. And the second rank 1 perk makes it easier to spot which text file in your firewall is infected. Considering it is incredibly easy already to tell which one is infected, it's safe to say that picking this perk is pretty useless. Moving on to the rank 2 perks. The first one really makes my ass quake because of how delectable it is, allowing the speed at which you unlock holding cell doors to increase. Opening the doors does take a considerable amount of time, so being able to do it faster is crucial. The second rank 2 perk just increases your max HP to 130. But generally speaking, if you're not a retard while you play the game, you shouldn't be getting damaged that often, so this perk is an easy skip. The third rank 2 perk increases the range at which your lure will attract the animatronics. This is quite literally so goddamn cock-sucking good I can't describe it to you. To not have to get super close to the characters in order to lure them will save you pretty much all chances you will have at getting your lure infected in the first place. And finally, the fourth rank 2 perk makes your lure move around the building faster, which is actually so yummy mashed potatoes in my belly, I couldn't help but buy this faster than your mom buys DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, and Postmates subscriptions. Now, moving on to hour 2, which introduces 2 new threats. Let's talk about the one that's a clone of Tealer first, Frill. Frill does pretty much the exact same thing as Tealer. You have to lure him into a holding cell and he can infect your lure. The only way he's different is how he goes about attacking your hallway. When Frill enters your hallway, he will quickly make his way to the door of whichever room you're in and make a noticeable sound cue. When he does, you'll have to look through the keyhole. Once he makes eye contact with you, he'll turn into a little piss baby and move back into the main room. What about the other threat? The one that isn't just an easier version of Tealer? Well, let me introduce you to Willow the Magician. Willow does not give a fuck about your lure, to put it bluntly. She will pile drive right towards your door with no hesitation. However, she is also probably the easiest threat to deal with in this entire game. When Willow enters your hallway, all you have to do is stare her down. Apparently, she's a little autistic and doesn't like eye contact. So all you have to do is make her incredibly uncomfortable in public situations where there are plenty of people around, yet somehow she still manages to feel unsafe because you're staring right at her. However, if you see her in the hallway and exit the hall or take too long to go into the hall, all of a sudden she'll start acting the way she was acting in the DMs and tear your ass to bits.
His machines have far greater potential than what they were made for, sitting in this facility, rotting away. I will put them back together.
Hour 3 introduces another copy and paste character. However, I don't feel like she's that big of an issue. The character in question being Tacy. Tacy is quite literally identical to Frill. She must be lured into a holding cell, can infect your lure, and is even dealt with in the hallway in the exact same way. The only major difference is that she's a lot quieter. She'll still make sound cues, but the chances of you actually hearing them are pretty low. This night does really start to bring into question how hard this game has the possibility of being. Since we obviously can't lure all 3 characters at the same time, it is very likely that at this point of the game we will pretty consistently have someone in our hallway. And with 2 of these characters requiring us to stare at them through a keyhole to deal with, it makes it a hell of a lot more likely that Willow will plow us in the ass. However, I do need to give Teelerland credit where credit is due. Although this game may sound like it can be incredibly unfair, this is honestly one of the most enjoyable FNAF experiences I've ever had. Even at the few frustrating bits I had, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I still found myself excited to play the next hour, and even found myself really wanting to complete the hard mode versions of the night, both to unlock the points and perks, and because it's genuinely just a super fun gameplay loop. Don't mind if I do. Done. I'm just too fucking good. I'm just too fucking good. Wahoo. It's the exact same excitement I got when playing Juniors for the first time, and Juniors ended up being one of the longest running series on the Dxtr Black channel.
They were meant to be taken apart, modified, tampered with. He should have known. One day it would all be compromised.
Hour 4 introduces a brand new threat to the mix with a new mechanic we haven't seen yet, so strap in. The threat introduced on this night is Mischievous. He does not have to be lured, and like Willow, does not give a shit about it anyways. He will lurk around your halls and wait to attack. When he enters your hall, his music box will begin to play. When you hear his music box, you cannot leave the room you're currently in or he will force himself on you. And this guy is really ugly, and you don't want that. After his music box finishes playing, he will leave a little doll in the room opposite of the one you're already in. You will then have to quickly move into that other room, find the doll, and click on it before the doll decides to do a little dance on it. Friction shit. This of course brings up the obvious issue. We have a character that forces us to switch rooms very quickly, and with several characters attacking our hall that require us to wait and be patient for us to leave, this could very obviously pose a pretty big threat if we were to get some poor attack timings. Once again, really showing how difficult, annoying, and RNG based this game can be.
One more step until the plan is complete. The clock is ticking.
Night 5 introduces nothing new. However, there is a very crucial mechanic I forgot to mention so far. Something that will make your dick hurt, because it certainly made mine hurt. Earlier in this game, a new mechanic was introduced, your generator, which adds a power system to the program you use to control your lure robot. On the map, you will be able to see where the generator is, and you'll also be able to see how much percentage it is at. You obviously don't want that meter to drop down to 0, so how do you fill it? Well, that's pretty simple. At the beginning of each hour, along with the generator, some fuel will spawn somewhere randomly on the map. And when the generator gets low, you'll have to use the lure to go get it and refill the generator. This isn't a hard thing to do by any means, but when you're also trying to juggle everything else that's going on, which trust me, there is a lot of, this will very quickly become something you dread doing.
It is complete. I've fixed them. I have made them perfect. They are all together now. They are now one. It will lure the beast out of his cage.
Well, oh boy, that doesn't sound good. But I mean, what's the worst that could happen? It's not like they're gonna take every character we've seen so far and merge them into one giant terrifying abomination and throw us into a new game mode that we haven't seen so far and have us learn from scratch, right? Oh, word. Shit is snowing. What's going on here? Oh, shit. Something tells me it is most certainly not okay. What the hell did I just see? What the fuck is that? Okay, so shit. That's exactly what's happening. Well, what do we have in store for us this time? For some reason, we're in a fucking dank cave. Not really sure why, but we are. And on top of that, there's a computer down in this cave. Again, not really sure why, but we roll with it, I guess. The goal of this finale hour is to destroy what this game calls Deterrent, which, yes, is every single character we've seen so far merged into one giant terrifying abomination. The way we go about destroying this thing is actually pretty cool and does literally feel like a boss fight, unlike most FNAF games that introduce boss fights. To start, let's talk about how Deterrent attacks, as it's pretty simple. There are 2 entrances to the room you're in behind you. Occasionally, you'll be able to hear him approach you from behind, and when he does, all you have to do is whip around and hold your flashlight on him. Which, yes, by the way, does have a battery life, so that's fun. Anyways, now to how we beat him. On the computer, we can see 4 rooms. Each room has a generator in it. When you hold the generator down, it will start to charge up. When it reaches 100%, it will explode. I'm sure you can see where we're going with this. You'll be able to see the deterrent moving around on the map. However, while you're charging a generator, for some reason, you go blind, which serves to make it more difficult to track deterrent, but also just literally makes no sense from a gameplay standpoint. But regardless, once you have a generator almost full, you will need to open the door to the generator's room. This will make the deterrent enter the room, but he won't stay in the room for very long, which is why you should already have the generator borderline completely charged by the time you invite him in. Obviously, once he's in, blow that bitch sky high and deal some damage. Then do this 3 more times, and congrats, you've won. Fucking moron, he did it 4 times! Ooh, what the hell? Where am I going? Oh. Yay! Hooray! Hooray! We fucking did it. Oh shit. What's gonna happen here? Oh damn. Oh. Oh, we climbing back out this bitch. Hell yeah, we are. Oh shit. Oh shit, we made it out of this bitch. Uh-oh. Don't tell me that Deterrent's still alive out there. Oh, what the fuck was that? Why is it so loud all of a sudden? Oh, that whole fucking place. Oh shit, he tried to crawl out. He tried to crawl out up after me. Get the fuck away. Who you think you is?
Don't you despise me? Don't you want me gone?
I don't really care.
All the times I tried to fix your wrongdoings,
I'm kind of indifferent.
I have already lost.
Yeah, you did.
So go ahead, David.
What?
Free from this place.
Oh shit, there was a dude in there. There was a dude in there, bro. Gulp. Brutally slaughtered. Wait, did you tell me I just killed a fucking dude down there? Like it wasn't even a robot? I just killed a dude? Is that what you're saying? Trying to understand here. Oh shit. That is disco, bro. Tealerland. No, that was badass. That was a badass game, bro. I can't even front with you. And just like that, we have completion. David puts an axe through the deterrent's head, and we have game over. Except one where we look like a badass. But the story of Tealerland is far more interesting than just that. It begins with 2 brothers, long before the lights of Tealerland ever flickered on. Teal Artel and David Artel built their company from nothing. A small business that slowly grew into something bigger, something sharper. And at the peak of that momentum, the brothers opened an amusement park attraction. Something simple, something fun, something that, at the time, didn't feel like it carried any real weight. That attraction was called Tealerland. For a while, it was nothing more than a strange little corner of the Artel brothers' world, a pet project tucked into the side of a much larger dream. Families came and went, the park buzzed with life, and nobody thought of it as anything more than a novelty. But places like this don't stay harmless forever. Not when the people running them drift apart. Not when one of them starts slipping into ideas that don't belong in an amusement park. Eventually, Teal and David's partnership cracked. The company fractured, and not long after, Tealerland shut down completely. No public explanation, no clean ending. The gates closed, the lights went out, and the attraction was left to rot under its own dust. When the world moved on, the Artel brothers went their separate ways. One of them tried to rebuild his life, the other vanished. Years passed before David Artel heard from his brother again. Out of nowhere, Teal reached out to him, a voice from a past he thought he'd buried, begging David to return to the old amusement park. The message didn't make sense. It didn't sound like the Teal he once knew, but there was fear in it, desperation, something that made David realize he couldn't ignore it. And so, against every instinct telling him to stay away, he went back. When David arrived, Tealerland was worse than abandoned. It felt staged, silent in a way that didn't feel natural. Half-crumbled structures, props left in strange positions, as if the place hadn't simply been forgotten, but deliberately prepared for someone. And as he wandered deeper into the park, trying to find his brother, he stumbled across something that confirmed it, a hidden entrance leading down into the earth, tracing beneath the park itself. David's company, the one he and Tealer built together, had been hiding an entire facility underneath the attraction. A whole underground complex, sealed off from the public long before Tealerland ever closed. A place where their past hadn't just been stored, it had been left alive. Once inside, David realized this wasn't just a forgotten workplace. The lights still worked, the systems still responded, and something else was awake down there with him. Something that didn't want him leaving. As he pushed further into the complex, the truth started to bleed through in fragments. Teal had been down here. Recently, he'd been working with the animatronics again, repairing them, rewiring them, bringing pieces of a dead attraction back to life. But whatever he had been doing, it wasn't for entertainment anymore. The machines began to move on their own, stalking the halls, watching David, responding like something had trained them toward him specifically. None of this was accidental. None of this was the result of some wandering malfunction. Teal had built an entire scenario deep underground, a controlled maze, a sequence of escalating encounters, leading David step by step through the remnants of their old work. Every hour that passed in the facility dragged him closer to the heart of the place, and closer to Teal's intentions, and along the way, David discovered something he had always kept buried. The truth about what happened years ago, about the employee who died, about the body that David hid, and about what that one terrible decision did to Teal's mind. When Teal finally emerged, no longer the person David once knew, but someone warped by grief, guilt, and obsession, David realized the entire journey through Tealerland had been orchestrated. Teal didn't bring David here to save him, he brought him here to force a reckoning between them. Surrounded by the machines that represented everything that went wrong in their lives. The final confrontation wasn't between man and animatronic, it was between brother and brother. One consumed by the past, the other trying desperately to bury it. And in the end, the fight ended the only way it could. David killed Teal. Not out of malice, not out of hatred, but out of a moment where survival became the only option left. When it was over, the facility fell silent. The machines powered down, and as David surfaced from the underground, authorities arrived. They didn't see a man who'd been hunted. They didn't see the twisted maze his brother designed. All they saw was David Artel standing over the body of his own brother. He was arrested, charged, and locked away. And just like that, Tealerland, the amusement park, the secrets beneath it, the broken partnership that created all of it, was left behind again. This time buried under police tape and unanswered questions. A dead attraction built on dead ideas, reclaimed once more by silence. And with that, as far as I'm aware, is all that Tealerland has to offer. Overall, I think this game was a ton of fun to play. It's not often that a FNAF game has me wanting to try and 100% it, but just like Junior's, Tealerland had me wanting to give it a try. The character designs are amazing, the atmosphere and story are phenomenal, and of course, the gameplay loop is one of the most enjoyable I've ever played. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think Tealerland is actually just forgettable garbage? I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen, and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light, and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question, how are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those 2 things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, 1 fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding 1 new threat that in turn adds 1 new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my 2 least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. You will be spending a majority of your your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every 5th laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except 2 things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dxtr, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. For those of you wondering what any of that means, At the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley's series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the guillotine killer. This has been revealed to be his 3rd victim. The guillotine killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The 3rd paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous guillotine killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually 1 other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dxtr Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the 2nd game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper. stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose 1 film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are 2 things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on. Except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow one of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really, but it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is. If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is, so you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces, that being the marionette. Oh boy, I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these two while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of 2 things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These 2 characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use 2 means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These 2 characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these two were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something so foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do. Oh fuck. Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked. I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her. I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving. It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me. She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit. I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So, you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these 2 leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You, of course, will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Cadet attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Cadet Hole will soon attack the other side. These 2 add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game, is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mango has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you, and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point, because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet, so I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dxtr Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Ooh! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking! What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Wanna know why? Because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise, the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of Night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of Night 6. Fuck, I'm dead. What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. And I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries. Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter. both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985, via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter. So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's third victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first 2 Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the 3rd game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. It's pretty normal for me to get suggestions for games to play, and especially so when a new FNAF fan game gets released. However, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Never throughout my entire YouTube career has a game been requested as frequently as the one we'll be covering today, and for a good reason. The game we'll be covering today is Forgotten at Fredbear's, the latest and greatest FNAF fan game in this ever-growing genre. Strap in, everybody. This game has a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and you will soon see why it's so hyped up. However, I feel it does have one big downside, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Before we can start talking about what this game has to offer in terms of an actual gameplay loop, we first have to talk about what happens before the game even begins, that being the opening cutscene.
I've done security work before, Mr. Afton. But this, the hours, the pay, it doesn't add up. Why me? You are reliable, John. That's all I need. A reliable man who does his job. The previous night guards will tell you everything you need to know. Do not concern yourself with the rest.
You always knew how to cover your tracks, didn't you, William? But I know what you've done. I've always known. It's not revenge. It's justice. Justice for her. I won't let her be forgotten.
Alright, so already we've got a lot to unpack. To start, I'm assuming that we'll be playing as the guy William was talking to, John. William is hiring a new guard, but as you can already tell by the sinister look on his face, he clearly has some ulterior motives. Henry is pretty pissed, and should be. William did kill his daughter after all, but I wonder if there's any proof of that murder actually happening. Afterwards, we're booted into an 8-bit minigame with a beautiful art style. Holy shit, this pixel art and animation is phenomenal. In it, we play as Evan, William's son, the crying child. However, instead of Evan getting bullied by the teenagers, Evan witnesses Charlotte being bullied by them instead. They push her outside into the freezing rain and Evan follows after her, only to watch William, his father, approach her and kill her in the alley. Evan runs back inside to Henry, Charlotte's father, and tells him what he saw. During their conversation, we can see the security puppet bolt past them in the direction of the exit door Charlotte got pushed out of, and this minigame comes to a close. So wow, this early in the game and we already saw the death of the first child. Should be kind of crazy out here, I suppose. Anyways, moving on to talking about night 1 and what this game really has to offer. The first thing I want to point out is how beautiful this game looks, especially when it comes to lighting. The designers of this game absolutely nailed the atmosphere of this game, and trust me, it only gets better the further down the rabbit hole we fall. The controls of this game are really a masterpiece, I can't lie. In my FNAF Rewritten 87 video, I mentioned how much I hated the way the mouse controlled, and how it was probably my biggest issue with the game. I cannot make the same complaint about Forgotten F Fredbear's. This just might be the most satisfying and responsive mouse controls I've ever felt while playing a FNAF game before. You wouldn't think you'd really notice a difference between FNAF games, but when you play as many as I do, it will be something you pick up on really quickly, and I really appreciate the devs of this game for nailing this so perfectly. Anyways, what about the tools at our disposal? Well, this game keeps it pretty simple. In our office, we have 2 entrances, I think. I know the door to our left is an entrance, but I'm also pretty sure that this big blurry thing in front of us is also a door, and this is corroborated by the way the camera map is set up as well. You can walk up to the door on your left, but just doing so will make it seem like it doesn't do anything at all. It will become very apparent what this door does once we start talking about one of the threats this night introduces. Of course, this game also has a camera system, as I already mentioned, and it comes equipped with several speakers to play music over. I'm sure you can guess where this is going. Before we start talking about threats, I think we should talk about this night's phone call and why I feel it's so weird. There are actually 2 phone guys, and each of their names are Joe, referring to themselves as Joe A and Joe M. They mention what we'll be doing throughout the night, but who cares about that? They also mentioned the disappearance of Charlotte and how it affected Henry. Apparently, now he's just hiding out in the basement. The Joes said they snuck into the basement to see him, but were caught and thrown onto the day shift, which is why we're on the night shift now. Very, very interesting and intriguing stuff. And if we don't figure out what's down there, I think I might tear my foreskin off. I think I should also make it clear that Henry is under the impression that William is on the night shift, so it appears William hiring us is a type of cover-up for something. Maybe that's why he looked so sinister. So, time to talk about the 2 threats this night introduces. To begin, we'll talk about Spring Bonnie. Another quick thing I want to mention is the character designs these animatronics have. They all look super sleek, but Jesus Christ, are they uncanny and terrifying looking. If I were a kid coming to these restaurants, I don't think I'd ever want to come back. These things are scary as fuck. Anyways, what does Spring Bonnie do? Well, he makes use of that left door I mentioned earlier. He will make his way around the cameras and to said door. He will then literally push it open. And I think you'll enjoy watching what you have to do for yourself next. Oh my God. What the fuck? Yo, that's fucked up. That's so fucked up that you just did that to me. Tell me that's not the coolest fucking thing you've ever seen. They're straight up tossing in some after hours at Cody's level timing shit, and I'm all for it. It really adds to the stress and tension that the actual employee would be feeling during this moment. I think it adds so much to the atmosphere and really makes it feel like you're part of the experience. The next threat this night introduces is the security puppet, easily one of the most uncomfortable looking characters to come out of this game. The way she works is very simple, but that doesn't make her mechanic stop me from blowing my foreskin up like a balloon and making some balloon animals out of it. The puppet will come out of the prize corner and attempt to get to your office. However, instead of having a bullshit music box, she instead is just attracted to the sound of music. Most of the cameras on the map have a music button I mentioned earlier. If you hold down one of these buttons, music will begin to play. However, only so much music can be played on each camera. You'll be able to see the music draining on the button, so you'll have to use it sparingly. If you play the music on a camera adjacent to the camera the puppet is on, the puppet will be dragged into that camera. Continue doing this to pull the puppet away from your office, and make sure you're keeping track of how much boof juice is in your music boxes, and you'll be a-okay. Something you'll notice is that this night ends at 3 a.m. I thought that was really weird, but guess what? We're not even close to being done talking about the first night, as we're thrown into a repair minigame after completing the main part of that night. In this vent area, there are 4 vents, one on each side of you. Ignore how we even got to this position. I'm assuming we just climbed through one of the vents possibly. The goal of this minigame is to repair each of the 4 vents by doing a different minigame for each. But before we talk about these minigames, let's talk about the 2 threats we'll have to deal with at the same time. The first and most annoying threat is Balloon Boy, because of fucking course it is. He can come through 3 of the 4 vents. You'll notice one of the vents has a door you can close on it. This vent will be reserved for the other character this night introduces, so Balloon Boy can travel through the other 3. Balloon Bitch will be laughing constantly to inform you as to which vent he is going to try and come through. Once he gets close, simply flash your light at him and he'll dive back into the hellhole he came from. The other threat in this minigame is Mangle. Mangle works in much the same way as Balloon Boy, except she can only attack the vent that has the door. She makes sound cues as well, and when the sound cue she makes is very loud, that's how you know she's about to attack. Quickly turn to her vent and hold the vent closed. Once she stops banging on it, you're free to let go and continue fixing the vents. Speaking of fixing vents, how exactly do you do that? Very simple. Just kidding, each vent has a different minigame. The first vent will have you match several symbols multiple times over. This minigame is obviously super simple, but do keep in mind you will be being attacked by 2 dickheads at the same time. Once you complete this minigame enough, you can move on to the next. The next minigame has you playing Simon Says. Easily the most frustrating of the 4 minigames for one main reason. You cannot drop the maintenance panel until the system has stopped showing you the Simon Says panels. So, if you hear Mangle about to rape your shit, you'll have to wait until the panel very slowly shows you all 5 squares you have to memorize before you can deal with her. You then have to hope to God you remember the pattern as you turn back, because if you fuck up, your repair percentage will drop and you'll be stuck doing this minigame for even longer. The next minigame is Simple Sugar. Every few seconds, a letter will appear. All you have to do is press that letter on your keyboard. Do this enough times, and we can talk about the final minigame. The final minigame blows a bit of dick. You will have 2 bars with 2 small rectangles at random points on them. Clicking and holding a bar will make it start to fill up. If you let go, the bar will slowly decrease. You have to get both bars to be inside of their small rectangles at the same time, and do this several times for the minigame to end. This isn't by any means a difficult minigame, it just makes my dick hurt and my blood pressure rise. But if you can complete all 4 minigames, Night 1 will officially be completed. That's right, that was all only Night 1. Hooray! Hooray!
I let you take the night shift. I thought the other guards were too curious. I told you I trusted you to handle things. So go ahead, play a little card. But I know what you did, and I'll be the one who will deal with you. Our creations will be your undoing. I know the truth, and I won't let you live after what you did to my girl. I know what you are capable of. I'm sorry, old friend.
Well, would you look at that? Henry appears to be tampering with the animatronics to make them more hostile to attack William, since obviously Henry is aware that he killed his daughter. However, what Henry doesn't know is that William isn't actually working the night shift like he said he was. William is 3 steps ahead. He knew Henry would do something like this, so he lied to Henry that he'd be taking the night shift and hired us in his place. This is actually some really cool light Yagami type storytelling. I actually really like it. Now, moving on to Night 2, we have the night segment to talk about, and the new threat that this night introduces. The little whiny, annoying bitch himself, Balloon Boy. Balloon Boy's mechanics are honestly pretty simple. You just need to have some decent reaction time. Balloon Boy will move around the cameras at complete random, so tracking him just doesn't even matter at all. At random times, he will enter one of your 2 vents. A very loud, obvious sound cue will play when he does so. A few seconds after you hear the sound cue, he will drop down from any of the 2 vents on your office ceiling. All you have to do is click whichever vent he's in, but you do have to be very fast since you will not have a lot of time to click on him. Once you click him, he'll crawl back into the vent like the disgusting little fucking nematode he is, and then his cycle will repeat. In all honesty, I like Balloon Boy's mechanic. Reaction-based mechanics are always something I'll favor since it's just something I feel I'm better at. However, I do have a complaint with the response of this mechanic. Let's use Spring Bonnie as an example. When you properly hit a timing during Spring Bonnie's attack, there is a visual indicator that you did so. Obviously, that being Spring Bonnie recoiling from you slamming on the door. This gives the user positive reinforcement that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing properly. Visual indicators are always very important things to have in your games for responses to the player's actions to let them know that the actions they are performing are intended. Balloon Boy has zero visual indication that you are dealing with him. Not only does this make dealing with him feel super unsatisfying every time you do it, but it can also be very confusing when you're first learning the mechanic. Let me give you the most basic example of a visual response indicator for those of you that don't want to do anything fancy. When you hover over the door to your office, your mouse changes to this sprite to indicate that yes, this is something that can be interacted with. Even this is enough of an indicator to let the player know what they should and shouldn't be trying to interact with. When Balloon Boy drops down from your vent, when you hover over the vent, not even this mouse change is present. Even though you are supposed to click on the vent, they give no visual indicator that you're supposed to do so. And when you do click on the vent, nothing seems to happen, as Balloon Boy will finish out his animation before closing the vent behind him and leaving. So when you click it, it literally feels like nothing happened at all. Is this a nitpick? Of course it is. However, I feel it's these little details that matter the most. When small things like UI and visual indicators are done properly, you won't even realize they're done properly at all, but you will realize when they're done poorly. Anyways, enough talking about that. Now it's time to talk about this night's post-night section, wherein instead of repairing the vents, this time around we're repairing Fredbear. This section is miles easier than the last. All we have to do is take Fredbear's head off, which you have to do very slowly or he will give you a rim job, which I'm personally just not a fan of. Afterwards, you'll have to remove his eyes. However, you can only remove them while they're moving or else he'll see you and
Playing your butt like a sandbox.
After that, get replacement eyes and put them and his head back on. Next, open his chest and do an Among Us wire and electrical task on his back. They even put symbols for all my other brothers who are colorblind, which I really appreciate. Put his chest back on and there's only one thing left to do. Run some diagnostics like we're Dr. House. Spoiler alert, it's not lupus. These are kind of like the salvage mini games from Pizzeria Simulator. You'll have to play some sounds that correlate to each of Fredbear's body parts. If at any point he starts twitching like a drug addict, stop holding the button, or he'll hold your butt and squeeze way too hard for your liking. After you finish that, night 2 is complete and we move on to night 3, but not before seeing something a little interesting on our screen. Oh shit, we got a crying bitch, dude. Get your ass up. Yeah, that's right. Get your ass up. He's home again. Did you hear the door, Evan? You saw her, didn't you? Charlie, bleeding. I didn't mean to see. I just wanted to check up on her. But you did see. You saw what he really is. He wears a smile in the daylight, but you know. You didn't forget. I don't want to remember. Too late. You know what happened to your sister, Evan? She's at Mom's. She's just visiting. No, she's not. Do you really think you're safe here with him? Lie still tonight. Don't speak. For next time, he'll open the door. No. Please don't be him. Oh. Evan, there you are, bud. Wanted to check on you. Your birthday's coming up. Got something really special planned. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Been quiet lately. Everything okay? Just tired. Alright. Get some rest then. He's lying. You saw it. Charlotte. The alley. His hands. And he's gone. We don't know why. You can't let him get away with this, Evan. Stop. Stop talking. You remember. And he can't know that. Ooh, shit. Night 3 only introduces one new threat, and I honestly don't feel like they're that much of an issue. But before we talk about that new threat, we need to talk about the insane phone call we got to hear. Joe A mentions that Henry was working on something that would make the animatronics be able to be controlled remotely, and they heard about it right after we noticed that Fredbear was tampered with, which was seen at the end of the post-Night 2 repair section. When Joe A mentions this, Joe M gets incredibly angry, and we hear the following crash out of epic proportions.
Joe! What the hell are you going on about? That's enough! Focus on the job, not on things that don't concern us.
Right. Sorry about that. I don't know. With Henry still missing and all, it kind of makes you wonder, like, what was he really up to? And there's the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opening up later this year.
Joe, I said that's enough! We're not here to talk about that. Stick to the script. We're here to help him survive, not gossip like old ladies. Or do you want him to end up like the others?
No, of course not. I just...
So, clearly they both are aware of something we're not. And from this point forward, Joe M is going to be a character I'm not a super big fan of in the slightest. But we can talk more about Joe M later. For now, let's talk about the new threat this night introduces. That new threat being Foxy, which turns out it was not Mangle in the vent, it was just Foxy, but he was all mangled. So it was basically fucking Mangle. Foxy is a character I was originally concerned was going to be a big pain in the dick, but again, I actually don't think that it's that big of a deal at all. Foxy is obviously in Pirate's Cove on stage. Every so often, you will be able to see him leaning forward, signifying he's about to sprint to your office like Tyson Gay and dig inside you like Scottie Pippins. When you see him leaning forward like this, all you have to do is close the curtains remotely for a bit until he calms down, then reopen them. You may be wondering, Dexter, why don't we just keep the curtains closed the entire night? That's a very good question, and is actually the question I had when playing this night. But turns out, Foxy does not like it at all when the curtain is closed. And if it happens to be closed for too long, he'll grab the curtains with his butt cheeks and rip the bitches open to force his way to your office. And I think we can all agree that that is a fate we don't want to have happen. What I personally found was the best strategy as of now was to force pull the puppet to Foxy's camera and just camp the cameras constantly. Since there's no power, I don't have to worry about it. And Spring Bonnie and Balloon Boy make sound cues when they attack, so that made it really easy to know when I needed to drop the cameras. Eventually, the music box in Pirate's Cove would run out, and when it did, I'd just drag the puppet to the prize corner and keep him there for the remainder of the night. If you recall, each night only goes until 3 AM, so this actually makes it very, very easy to conserve your music boxes. I just really hope that the puppet doesn't get ass-clenchingly fast by the end of this game. Of course, after we reach 3 AM, we can move on to the post-night section, which has us restocking a supply closet, with Joe M on the phone with us, talking it through. It's during this section where we begin to hear how much of an asshole Joe M really is, as throughout this section, as he's explaining what to do, the tone in his voice is very clearly aggressive.
The closet light, and don't move.
Gotcha.
Not even a single twitch. Got it?
I got it. Damn, bitch.
Let's stock the shelves fast and clean.
It's the goal, asshole. Anyways, on to what we actually have to do during this section. Throughout it, we will get deliveries of boxes outside of the closet door, consisting of things like duct tape, paper towel, tissues, and some other shit as well. Joe M will tell us the very oddly specific places on the shelf where we need to place each item. Which, by the way, I don't know why where we place things is so goddamn important, but clearly to Joe M, it is. Of course, that's not all we have to do, as Fredbear and Spring Bonnie will be trying to enter our insides, like those fucked up little crack addicts who decide diving face first into a cave called Tight Squeeze Death Trap that has a survival rate of 0%, knowing damn well they have a wife and 3 kids back at home. Each character behaves slightly differently, and will require a different form of defense. If you ever see Spring Bonnie at your door, all you have to do is hold your flashlight on his face until he runs away. Fredbear is a little different. If you see him at your door, you have to shut the light off to the closet and hold completely still until you hear his big fat feet waddling away. Then you can turn the light back on and continue. After you stock every item and fill the shelves up, Joe M abruptly hangs up on us. No goodbye.
Closet stocked. You're done.
Good. Why is he such a dude? Why is he such a dickhead? I have no idea what got into him. He's acting like we're the ones who brought up Henry's new experiment on the phone. It's not my problem, asshole. Anyways, on to night 4.
I don't care. Take care of Joe A. He's gonna get us all in trouble. Hey, champ. You like the yellow ones or the red ones better? You know, I didn't get a party like this when I was your age. Back then, we didn't have animatronics singing our name.
I don't want them to sing to me.
Come on, you'll love it. All your friends will be here. It's going to be perfect.
Do I have to go?
It's only a few more days.
Evan clearly is not a fan of the restaurant. I wonder why. Considering what he saw, there's not so much to talk about in the night section of Night 4. However, there are two things I still want to mention. The first being the absence of Joe A. Obviously, in that cutscene, William says to get rid of him, and Joe M on the phone call says we won't be seeing him again. He also continues being an asshole throughout the call as well, and ends the call abruptly. No goodbye, dick. Anyways, the second thing I want to talk about is obviously the threat this night introduces. The man, the myth, the fat bastard himself, Fredbear. In all honesty, I think Fredbear is a pretty disappointing character in this game, as he is quite literally pretty much just Balloon Boy. Fredbear will wander through your cameras and eventually make his way to the two big doors in front of you in your office. When he walks through these doors, all you have to do is stare at him and not move. After a few seconds and some hallucinations saying he hurt us, Fredbear will exit the office. Literally just Balloon Boy with less steps, because you don't even have to click on him. But in all honesty, I think this game shines way more in the post-night minigames rather than the actual night segments, which I actually think is pretty cool. So speaking of, what happens during Night 4's post-night minigame? Well, we actually get to hear from Joe A again. He begins his message by saying if we're hearing him now, then that means something terrible happened to him. So basically, somebody murked my homeboy, and I'm gonna figure out who it is. Mark my words, when I do, I'm gonna grab their balls and squeeze them so hard they burst into little pieces, bursting his 2 balls into 38 tiny balls. Don't play with me. In this minigame, we get to speak directly to the puppet. Joe A tells us that we should never repeat to anyone what the puppet is about to say to us. There are some pre-selected questions that we'll have to ask her, and through her answers we learn that she's Charlotte, the girl William killed in the alley, and the girl that Evan found, Henry's daughter. She mentions William, Henry, and the basement that she says nobody was supposed to enter. However, Henry has been in the basement a lot recently, obviously working on whatever he's doing to kill William. The puppet tells us that she has the key and ends the minigame by giving it to us, telling me that the final minigame we'll play will take place in that basement. However, this minigame isn't just talking to the puppet, as there are two major threats we have to deal with while doing so. Obviously, one of them is the puppet herself. While she's having the conversation with us, Joe A told us that she's very unstable. So if she ever starts to quiver in her boots, we'll have to use the music box to calm her down. The second threat during this minigame is Foxy. He will eventually wander into the prize corner with us, attempting to lick up the nape of our neck. He has several positions he can be seen in. If at any point he starts twitching like a drug addict, you'll have to pull the spring lock override switch to reset him. However, resetting him will also cause the puppet to go crazy mode, and you'll have to immediately use the music box to calm her down again. After we get the key from Charlotte, we can move on to Night 5. Speaking of night, there is a metric fuck ton to talk about, so let's waste no time. To start, the night section is just a harder version of Night 4, so we can completely skip over that as it's not interesting at all. However, the post-night minigame is something crazy.
These machines were meant to be the future, William. The start of something new. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. A place where children can laugh again. A place where you and I could have built something good.
And just like that, we've entered the basement where the original 4 animatronics are present and ready to eat our bussy. This minigame feels very reminiscent of Night 1's post-night vent minigame, where we have 4 different tasks to complete while being attacked. Each task we have to complete relates to one of the characters. Each has a different task we have to perform, while that task's respective character tries to insert itself inside of us. To start, let's begin with the main office area. There is a notepad on our desk that explains in detail how to deal with each character, but I'll be doing that for you, so we're going to ignore that part. What is important is this code on the bottom line, which gives us a termination code for each animatronic. After completing their task, we'll have to type this code into the computer to disengage them. While in the office, each animatronic has the chance to appear. When they do, just hide under the desk until they go away. Alright, so let's talk about Bonnie's minigame first. In it, there are several wires like it's Among Us. While looking at the panel, every century it feels like a symbol will appear on a small screen. You then have to cut the wire that shares that symbol. Cut the wrong one and Bonnie has a field day with you. Also, Bonnie is fat as shit. Occasionally, Bonnie will appear in the room with you. When he does, all you have to do is stare at him and hold your flashlight in his eyes, blinding him like when I was a kid and would stare at the sun for too long, or when I'd put the flashlight right up to my eyeball and turn it on. After you cut all the wires and disable him on the computer, we can move on to Chica.
But I know what you did. To her. To Charlie. You stood there and you watched the light go out of her eyes, didn't you? My little girl. And you took her from me. I thought if I gave these machines a greater purpose, if I made them strong enough, smart enough, maybe they could end you. Maybe they could give her peace.
Chica's tasks requires you to wait for 300 years for a fuck ton of switches to light up in a specific order, flicking them on after they light up. Meanwhile, Chica will slowly be approaching you through the hallway. When she gets close, all you have to do is close the door until she leaves. Once you've flipped every switch and disabled her on the computer, it's time to move on to Foxy.
Fredbear wasn't enough. Neither were the others upstairs. You slipped through again, like you always do. So I turned to the prototypes. Stronger, smarter, obedient only to me. Never to you.
Foxy's minigame is by far the best in terms of it not taking 6,000 light years to complete. All you have to do is spin this crank in a circle, more than I throw my ass in a circle when I play a FNAF game with no power and no music box. While you do this, Foxy will slowly appear out from behind the curtains. All you have to do is occasionally pull them closed and he won't be able to get you. Terminate him on the PC, and we can move on to Freddy.
I rewrote their code, set their purpose. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica. The ones buried down here. They were meant for you, William. To tear you apart, piece by piece, until nothing is left.
Freddy makes me want to die, easily being the most annoying character in this entire minigame. All you have to do is hold down a lever while a meter very painstakingly slowly fills up. Occasionally, Freddy will enter the room, and all you have to do is stare at him and not move until he goes away. The only problem with this section of this minigame is that it literally takes like 5 fucking minutes. It's ridiculous. Of course, terminate him on the computer, and the night is over, giving us this final, insane cutscene. It's a pretty long one, but you're not going to want to miss it.
I can't forgive you. Not for Charlie. Not for Elizabeth. Not for any of them. I don't know how, but you seem to destroy everything you touch. I want you to remember her face. Remember what you stole. Because everything I've built since that night has been for her. You will die here, William. And you will suffer.
Thank you for getting rid of them for me. But I can't let you walk out of here with all that, John. Nothing personal.
It's Evan's birthday, and all of the kids and William are standing around us. Henry enters and mentions he needs to talk to William. William, being in the spring Bonnie costume at the time, agrees and they head into the back room. Evan goes to follow them, but Michael drags him to Fredbear to do exactly what you'd think. I'll let the rest of the cutscene speak for itself, because it is truly one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Well, look who finally decided to come home. You're here about Charlie. Of course you are. Why'd you do it? You really don't know. It wasn't just about her. It was about you. What? You had everything. The money, the awards, your name on every goddamn news article. Henry Emily, the genius behind Fredbear's. You were the face of the future. I was just the man behind the curtain, building your dreams. You had a wife who loved you, kids who adored you, and Charlie. God, she looked at you as if you hung the stars. Meanwhile, my wife left. Michael hated me. Evan feared me. And Elizabeth got too close to one of my creations, and I just let it happen. Because that's what I do, Henry. Everything I build turns to rot. But you kept building a dream. So I tore it down. I took something you'd never get back. Not because I had to, but because I could. I wanted you to wake up like I do, empty.
Come on, give him a big old birthday kiss.
Oh, he's gonna cry again. She was just a child. Evan.
Holy shit. William went to save his child from Fredbear, but Henry remotely causes the spring lock failure while William was out in the open in front of everyone, in front of his 2 children. The spring lock failure happens in public where there are plenty of people to see, and as far as I can tell, it's not even confirmed if the bite happens. This was easily the most shocking cutscene I've ever seen from any FNAF game, and you can see my reaction to it over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Finally, we see the locked FNAF 4 box. We get the bad ending. There's something we're missing. And don't worry, we're going to get it. Throughout this game, several crumpled notes can be found in various locations. Collecting all 6 of them will allow us to see what's inside of the box. So let's go over each location where you can find them. The first page is on night 1. It'll be directly on your desk. It reads, Evan keeps crying every night. He says he's seeing things moving at Fredbear's when nobody's there. Ever since Charlie went missing, he's been acting weird. The second page is found inside of one of the vents during the post-night 1 minigame. However, it doesn't appear immediately. You will have to wait for a little bit before it'll actually show up, which is a bit weird. Regardless, it reads, It's kind of funny how that balloon boy animatronic looks like me when I was little. I think Dad's trying to mess with me. He said it's a reminder of his favorite troublemaker. The third note can be found on the floor of the back room during the Repair Fredbear minigame. It reads, Henry hasn't shown up in a while. When I asked Dad, he started acting mysterious again. Reminds me of when Mom took Liz and left. Dad won't even talk about it. The 4th page is found during the stockpiling shelves minigame. After stocking the pizza boxes and the paper towel rolls, in the hallway you'll be able to find it on the floor. It reads, "The new Freddy's place is supposed to have a Pirate Foxy animatronic. I told Dad that one's gonna be my favorite." The 5th page is found during the speaking to the puppet minigame. If you turn around where Foxy stands, you'll be able to see it on the shelf. It reads, "My favorite employee, Joe A, got fired today. Kinda sucks. He was pretty cool. Used to sneak me extra tokens when Dad wasn't around. At least we still have the other Joe, but he's been acting weird lately." The final note is found in the basement night. If you go to Chica's room, on a chair next to the wall is where the note lays. It reads, "Me and the guys are planning something for Evan's birthday. We're gonna make him see that Fredbear's isn't scary. He needs to toughen up." Through these notes, it's very obvious that they were all written by Michael Afton. And that last note is especially eerie, confirming that the act that ends up getting Evan killed was premeditated. Now granted, clearly from this note we see they weren't trying to harm him, and it's framed in this game that Michael actually really cares about Evan and wants him to be tougher and not so scared of Fredbear's like we know he is. And nothing confirms this more than the true ending. After collecting all 6 notes, we'll be able to open the FNAF 4 box, and we get to hear from Michael himself, now completely alone with no family left.
Evan, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm so sorry. I didn't think you would go that far. I didn't think that you were always scared of that place, and I made it worse. I thought maybe you'd laugh, or at least see it wasn't real. Dad's gone. Right after it happened, his body disappeared, just vanished. No, it's just me. I didn't mean to hurt you, Evan. I didn't mean to scare you. I just wanted you to stop crying. To stop being afraid. But I messed up. I'm gonna fix it. I don't know how yet, but I will. I'll stay here. I will put you back together, and then I'm gonna go find him. I'm going to go find Dad. Wherever he is. I don't care how long it takes. Evan, just don't leave me too.
So, here we learn what will motivate Michael to do what he did in the first 2 Click Team games. After the Springlock failure, William's body disappeared, implying that, as he always says, he always comes back. Michael sets out on his quest to find his father, and Forgotten at Fredbear's comes to a close. Overall, I think Forgotten at Fredbear's is an insanely good retelling of the origin story of what started all the conflict in Five Nights at Freddy's. It's easy to follow, yet there are several little things you can pick up on early in the game that hint towards what's going to happen, and I love that. I do think that the night section gameplay mechanics are pretty weak, and I do believe that the post-night sections are where this game truly shines. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this game doesn't compare to the other newer FNAF fan games? The FNAF Fanverse Initiative, an idea Scott Cawthon had that was so good. The ability to bring fan game devs of your games into a closer community and allow them to sell merchandise based off of your branding is an amazingly generous and incredible opportunity. Having amazing games come out of it, such as Joy of Creation, Five Nights at Candy's, and Pop Goes, each of these creators are very passionate in what they do, and it shows. Another game to come out of the fanverse is One Night at Flumpty's 3, the third game in an incredibly designed series. But as something that has become all too familiar with FNAF fan games, as previously seen in games like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and Dormitibus, the creators' morals and ethics of said games can be called into question. And sadly, the creator of this game, Jonachrome, had his turn on the chopping block that is the internet. Today, I'll be diving into Jonachrome's fantastic FNAF fan game series, all the goods, all the bads, and the disturbing accusations that had the light shined on them for all the public to see. Come with me as we explore the masterpiece of a FNAF game created by a deviant. One Night at Flumpty's 1 is what you'd expect from an old FNAF fan game. It's pretty much just a recreation of FNAF 1, but this game did it differently. Something I think a lot of people could agree with me on is that One Night at Flumpty's was ahead of its time. No other FNAF fan game was as well put together as Flumpty's was. You could argue Five Nights at Candy's was, but I'm not talking about Candy's right now, am I? As the title suggests, this game only features one night, but don't let that make you think it'll be a cakewalk. This one night is up there in difficulty with nights 5 and 6s from the normal FNAF games, and the difficulty increases by the hour instead of the day. Before I dive into gameplay, however, I want to talk about how amazing this game really looks. There's a lot to be said about Jonachrome, and I'll be diving more into his character at the end of the video. But Jonachrome is an artist, and a damn good one at that. Every single location in this game has so much character put into it, especially the office. Sure, there's a lot of dead things, but ignore what it is for a second and just admire how well done the 2D art in this game really is. Not many FNAF games go for a 2D approach, and I really wish more did because I think it looks amazing. Look at Playtime with Percy for another example. That game is 2D and it looks incredible. Then look at another completely flawless and probably the best FNAF game ever designed with zero competition, FNAF Shitpost. Another game with 2D art that is fantastic, and I definitely have no bias over that game at all. This game did something no other was doing at the time, and it has aged like a fine wine. But now, let's jump butthole first into the gameplay. As mentioned already, this game only has one night. But dear God, it's a long one. Each hour of this night is a minute and a half, making the full night 9 minutes long, which is a crazy amount of time for a FNAF game where you need to have good nerve control. Just like FNAF 1, you have a power system. However, it's only affected by your doors, so feel free to camp the cameras as much as you'd like without the worry of draining your power, which I promise you'll be doing often, as this game is going to rail you in the asshole with encounters, and you'll have to stay on top of each character's location. Speaking of the characters, who are they? Nice segue, Dxtr. Thanks, Dxtr. The first guy we'll talk about is obviously Flumpty, the main attraction. Flumpty acts both as the Freddy of this game and the phone guy. At the beginning of the night, he tells you that his name is Flumpty and that he is immune to the plot and can transcend space and time. He goes on to tell you that he kidnapped you and brought you here to be friends and that he's coming after you. And coming after you, he is. Holy shit. This guy moves at the speed of sound. Flumpty moves randomly across cameras with no pattern, and he can teleport wherever and whenever he likes. Which means, if you're unlucky like me, he can get to your office in about 15 fucking seconds after the night starts. That's awesome. I'm in for a shitty time, aren't I? I'm covering 3 games in this video? Can I get that confirmed? Hey, can you confirm that? Uh-huh. Yeah? Yeah, alright, fuck me. 3 games in the first 15 seconds already has me stressing. I love this. If you're unable to see Flumpty on any of the cameras, that means one of 2 things. Either 1, he's on the broken camera, which I'll talk about later, or 2, he's at your left door. If he's at your left door, just close it and bada bing bada boom, he can't get in. But something you'll immediately notice is that, unlike FNAF 1, there's no windows, so you won't be able to tell when he's left by just sitting in your office. So you'll have to constantly be checking the cameras to see where he is. And when he moves as fast as he does, it can get overwhelming quickly. Let's talk about our next freak, birthday boy Blam, or just Blam as I'll be calling him. Blam works very similarly to Flumpty, except he attacks the right door, and he can't teleport like a dick. He follows a set path to your right door. Just close it, watch the cameras to see when he leaves. I just queefed. That's all you have to do about him. Oh, and in case you're curious, he's also Usain fucking Bolt and moves around the building at Mach 30, so that's just awesome. The Beaver is up next on the chopping block, and yes, his name is just the Beaver. I guess Jonachrome gave up on names here, but that's okay. What does he do? The Beaver acts as this game's Foxy, which it honestly didn't even need because of how often you're checking the cameras, but who really cares? The Beaver is sitting on the toilet taking a big fat patty whacker double-decker dump and reading a newspaper with several tasteful stories in it. Next to the toilet, you'll see a roll of toilet paper. Throughout the night, the more you fail to watch the beaver, the smaller the roll of toilet paper will get. When he runs out of toilet paper, the beaver will sprint at your right door. Also, quick side note, the beaver has knife feet. I don't know why, it's just something interesting to note. Who's up next, huh? Who do I have in my sights? Boom! Grunkfuss the Clown. Arguably one of the most popular characters to come out of this series. Grunkfuss is the first character I've mentioned who doesn't start at the beginning of the night. Instead, he starts at 4 a.m. I love this clown's mechanic. It's incredibly cool. I should mention that this game deliberately doesn't tell you how to play, and it doesn't describe how any of the characters work, leaving you to figure it out yourself. I love this idea, and it can lead to you feeling pretty smart when you find a small detail that can help you figure out how a character works, and Grunkfuss is a perfect example. Grunkfuss doesn't show up on your cameras. Instead, he is only ever visible inside of your office. As the night goes on, he will become more and more visible via a hole in the wall of your office. Well, that doesn't sound fair, I hear you say, and I usually agree, until you put your thinking cap on and realize there's a hint in this game that perfectly explains how Grunkfuss works. On camera 5, there's a hole in the ground with 30 eyes inside. That number is very important. Every time you lift your camera up, you'll notice that one of the 30 eyes have disappeared, and every time you pull your camera down, Grunkfuss becomes more visible. If his eyes reach 0, when you pull the camera down, Grunkfuss will grunk-fuck your shit up. I think this is such a cool little hint this game gives you to explain how he works. You could easily play through the whole game and never piece this together. This is something I really love when games do, and I'd really like to see more of it. But we've still got more to talk about, buddy. Let's move on to the Red Man. Red Man becomes active on hour 3 and starts on camera 3. You'll notice throughout the game up until this point that camera 3 has never been visible. That's because Red Man isn't technically visible on the cameras. Whichever camera he's on will be blacked out, which lets you know where he is. Red Man slowly moves from camera 3 to your left door where you'll be able to see him and close it. Just like the other door characters, you'll have to watch the camera for when he leaves. This brings me back to a point I made when talking about Flumpty. If Flumpty or Blam are on the same camera as Red Man, they too won't be visible, meaning there's a possibility you won't be able to find them, and a possibility that you'll shit your pants as I did when I couldn't find Flumpty because he was camping out with Red Man. So that was fun. The final character I have to briefly mention is Golden Flumpty, and I say briefly because there's not much to talk about. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, and when you do, you have to quickly pull up the cameras. If you don't, a dead sandwich is what you'll be turned into. In terms of characters, that's all One Night at Flumpty's has to offer. This game can be brutally hard. Obviously, like any FNAF game with enough practice, you'll be able to beat this game like clockwork. But hot damn, your first run through might very well be pretty difficult, especially considering you're not taught how to do a goddamn thing. But that's the first game. I'd personally say that it's fantastic. But what if I told you the second game is even better? Let's waste no time and jump into it. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is visually just as great as the first. Each setting looks fantastic. The game is significantly harder than the first, mainly because there's much more to focus on. To start, this game's phone call actually explains the rules. Like a little bit. You're gonna have to do a lot of trial and error, but hey, it's still more than the first game gave us. The phone call this time around is a short song, which, that's just lovely, isn't it? The song explains if our lights are off, we're safe, and if they're not, we're about to get our cheeks spread apart so hard they rip off. So, why is the light so important? Well, let's do what we do best and go over each threat one by one. Let's start with Flumpty. As he was in the last game, he's pretty basic in terms of mechanics. Like in the first game, he teleports around wherever and whenever he pleases, so don't think for a goddamn second you're safe, because you're not. He's hungry for ass, and you got a whole lot of it. He a hungry bitch. If at any point you can't find him on the cameras, he will be right outside of your door in the hallway, and in a few seconds, will pop his head in and give you a blumpkin. Characters looking into your office actually brings up one of this game's central mechanics, which I think is really cool. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see an exposure meter. If at any point that meter fills all the way up, it's time for Flumpty and his friends to eat toast off your ass without the toast. When Flumpty peeks his head in, he will have his hands over his eyes to play a quick game of peekaboo with you. Be lucky that he's forgiving like this, because no other character from this point forward will be. While he has his eyes covered, your exposure meter will not increase. This gives you about half a second to turn the lights to your room off. After a few seconds, he will leave and you can turn your lights back on. But before we continue, let's go over what else happens when you turn your lights off. Let me quickly go over the camera and something I noticed about these games that I really like. Notice how in the first game, the camera didn't waste any power. Well, in this game it does, but it does it in a much more engaging way than it does in other FNAF games. Rather than just lowering an arbitrary number, you'll notice on the bottom of your screen you also have a laptop power meter, your laptop being your cameras. While your laptop is up, that meter will decrease, and when you put the laptop back down, the meter will slowly charge and increase again. I love this mechanic. It's still consequential to sit on your cameras, but it still keeps you in control. These games have such good balancing. I struggle to find other FNAF games to match in this department. If your laptop meter is to go completely empty, it will forcibly close and you'll have to wait for it to charge all the way back up before opening it. And when you do, you'll have to wait for the laptop to reboot. This may not seem like a very big deal, but when watching the cameras is as important as it is in this game, having to wait those 10 seconds can feel like an eternity. But back to turning the lights off. When the lights are turned off, you cannot access your cameras, and your laptop will not charge. This is one of those multiple ways this game keeps you from sitting alone in the dark. Something I think all of you chronic gooners should take note of. Blam Birthday Bitch Boy is next. He, like in the last game, works almost the same as Flumpty, moves around a set path, goes to your office, takes a sneak peek at your bits. However, this motherfucker don't play no games. No peekaboo for this guy. Once he's looking, your exposure meter starts to climb. This leads to you needing to watch the cameras and track his location, because even multiple small slivers over how godforsakenly long this night is will start to add up and lead to your asshole looking like a cave. Blam increases your meter faster than Flumpty does. Even though Flumpty is literally a chaos god of death, he increases your meter slower than any other character in this game. Something I think says a lot about his character. I'd say he's just a little harmless guy, but he also has canonically killed 1 billion birds with one stone. No, I'm not joking. Grunk Fuck-Ass the Clown is also pretty similar to how he was in the first game. Psych! I fucking lied, bitch! Go look in the mirror at how fucking stupid your face is. You actually thought for a second I wasn't gonna lie straight to your stupid, dumb, ugly face, but I did. Anyways, Funko Pop the Clown can be seen crouched on camera too. Around 2 a.m. he will become active, with a hole appearing on your wall and a patience number appearing on camera too, and quickly decreasing. Once Grunkle Stan the Clown's patience wears thin, he'll pop his head through the hole in your wall and dramatically begin increasing your exposure meter. I'm talking Tyson Gay levels of quickness, and I say Tyson Gay instead of Usain Bolt because there's one character who increases it even faster. Eyesore is technically another character returning from the first. Remember the eyes that appeared in the hole on the floor that showed how many times you could flick up the camera before Fuckhead the Clown would ream you from behind? Yeah, that's him. That's Eyesore. Eyesore will start on camera 1, but won't be active until 4 a.m. Keep in mind, each hour in this game is long as fuck. He'll make his way to your office and peer in. When I tell you, the speed at which this bastard eviscerates your exposure meter is faster than the speed at which I bolt to the toilet after Indian food. I'm not lying. I suppose it makes sense given how many eyes he has, but like, damn! Don't let this guy eye bang you for too long, no matter how sexually attracted you are to it. The last returning character we have to bring up is Redman. But Dxtr, what about the beaver? He fucking died. He fell into the toilet and fucking died. Are you happy? I didn't want to have to tell you, but you pulled my leg. Dick? Anyways, Redman. At random points during the night, warning pop-ups will appear on your laptop. If you're not in your laptop, it will be signified next to your camera button with a warning sign like the music box from FNAF 2. When you see this warning message, it will be accompanied with a loading bar. If the loading bar fully increases, you'll be as dead as disco. All you have to do is click cancel. If you lose to Redman in this game, I have no sympathy for you. You have to try and lose to this guy. What about new character? Well, there's only one, but he's pretty sick. The Owl. The Owl will appear on your cameras taking a fat-ass nap. Throughout the night, he will open his eyes and eventually leave the urinal he's perched on. When he does, you'll have to quickly check your vent cameras to see which vent he's about to assault you through. Once you know, you'll have to close the vent in your office in accordance with which side the Owl is attacking you from. If you don't, you guessed it, ask buffet and you're the main course. The vents don't waste any power, but only one of them can be closed at a time. So there's that. Additionally, you can close the vents even if your lights are off, which is incredibly generous and really just adds to the flow and pattern this game has. The final character I want to talk about is Golden Flumpty. So I guess I technically lied when I said Redman was the last recurring character, but fuck you. He works the same way as he did in the first game. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, either quickly turn the lights off or pull up your camera and he'll leave. Whoopity-doo, lore or something, I don't really know. That's all One Night at Flumpty's 2 has going for it. Well, it has a difficulty mode called Hard Boiled, which drastically increases the difficulty of the night, but it doesn't change any fundamental game mechanics, so I don't think it's worth diving into. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is such an enormous step up from the first, and that's saying a lot considering how amazing the first game really was. With the third game right around the corner, I can't wait to see what Jonachrome came up with. Oh, did I say right around the corner? Sorry, I meant 6 fucking years later. One Night at Flumpty's 3 released in 2021. Jonachrome made it clear he was never interested in making another Flumpty's game after 2, but the only reason he did is because Scott reached out to him for the Fanverse initiative. So what does 3 have to offer, and does it live up to the last 2? Flumpty's 3 is just like the last in one way. The art is phenomenal. Every single scene is fantastic and full of references. It makes the game very fun to look at. The office in this game is very frozen. You'll notice a thermometer in the corner of your screen. It's very important that you keep yourself warm and not let that meter reach empty, or you'll freeze to death like a bitch. You can go over to the furnace to have it slowly increase, and you'll need to be doing this throughout the night. How about the threats though? Returning from the last 2 games, we have Blam, who works very similarly to how he does in previous games. He'll move around the building in a set path and make it to your door, which in this game is really just a hallway. The cameras don't have power, so you should be camping them as often as you can. When Blam gets to your door is when we have to talk about a new mechanic, your camera. On the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a camera button with 20 uses. That's right, you can only use this camera 20 times throughout the night before it won't work anymore. So you better make sure you're keeping track of where every character is, because you don't want to waste any of these flashes. When Blam gets to your door, all you have to do is flash the hall and he'll run away. But be aware, there's no visual or auditory cue to signify that he's there, which is why watching the cameras is so important. Next, we've got another returning character, which by the way, there are no new characters, so I'll stop mentioning this. Anyways, the next character is Grunk Punk-Ass Slut Bitch the Clown. He does literally the exact same thing as Blam, but with one key difference. You do not want to flash him when he's in the hallway. The flash makes him scared and he'll pee his pants. That makes him embarrassed and he'll have to kill all the witnesses, and sadly for you, you're the only witness, so guess it's time to die. But being serious, while Grunkfuss is technically easier to deal with than Blam, he really makes you make sure you know where everyone is, because one false flash and it's game over. Next up on the chopping block, as I've said for the second time this video, is the Red Man. He becomes active at 1 AM and will make his way towards your furnace. On his furnace room camera, you'll see a warning telling you to stay away from your furnace. If you go to warm up by the furnace while this message is present, he'll eat your ass from the back, which I know some of you dirty freaks want, but for the rest of us normal people is something we'd prefer to prevent. I actually think this is a really nice mechanic. Something to keep you away from the only safe thing you have is super interesting. Knock knock, who's there? I don't really know, I don't usually answer my door, but we're talking about the eyesore next. He becomes active at 4 AM and actually can't be seen on the cameras. So how are you supposed to defend yourself? Well, lucky for you, you can actually see him in your hallway. Unlike the other characters, however, you'll actually have to flash eyesore twice to make him go away. And because your camera has a cooldown, this can lead to a deadly combo with Grunkussy. You'll need to make absolutely sure he's not in the hall when you go to flash eyesore. What about the owl? I hear you asking. Well, a better question would be, what about the beaver? Better yet, how about both of them, because they're both here in this game merged together as one in the form of the bee vowel. Talk about a freak of nature, am I right? Chat, if I ever end up looking like this freak, please pull the plug, I won't be mad. Anyways, the bee vowel starts at 2 AM and will appear on camera 3 in the hot tub. He will gradually climb out of the tub and crawl into your vent. This brings up the other side of your office where you can actually see the vent. This vent functions the exact same way the other door does. When you know the bee vowel is in the vent, all you have to do is flash him with your camera and he'll go away. But this does lead to a split path that you'll have to watch just as much as the door path, which can become stressful as the night progresses. Finally, we have to talk about Golden Flumpty, who is just as uneventful as he was in the last 2 games. When you see him on your cameras, you can't pull down the camera unless you switch to another camera he isn't on. Otherwise, he kills you. And that's all the threats. Survive until 6 a.m. and the final game in the Flumpty's franchise is over. In all honesty, I think this game isn't nearly as good as Flumpty's 2. I think that might be because of the fact that Jonachrome... Huh? What? What about Flumpty? I didn't talk about him? Oh, yeah, about that. Flumpty is pretty pissed that you survived as long as you should have, and is even more pissed at his friends for not being able to kill you. Being a god, Flumpty sets the time back to 12 a.m., murders all of his friends, and comes to get you himself. I lied. We're not even close to being done. Let's talk about this game's second night, Flumpty Night. You'll immediately notice some new stuff, but I'll talk about them as they become important. In this night, after killing all his friends, Flumpty transcends space and time and is able to morph his body and appear in multiple places at a time. He replaces all of his friends and takes a majority of the mechanics of the night. Let's go over each Flumpty clone together. It can get a bit confusing, and this night is a clusterfuck, but I'll hold your hand and explain everything as best I can. And let me tell you, my palms are clammy. The first clone to talk about is Another Flumpty. Yes, his name is literally, quote, Another Flumpty, end quote. This guy is the exact same as Birthday Boy Blam. Fireside Flumpty replaces the Red Man. Spider Flumpty, aka fucking animated Flumpty, again, that is literally his name, replaces the B vowel. But something cool I want to mention about Spider Flumpty is that he is gorgeously animated. Like, look at his animation when he crawls through the vent. It's gorgeous. Now we need to talk about the Flumpty clones that have their own mechanic in this game. Except not really. All-Seeing Eye Flumpty acts exactly like Grunkfuck does in Flumpty's 2. On camera 6, he'll have a patience timer, and when it reaches 0, he'll appear in your office through a hole in your wall. Also, you'll notice on this night that an exposure meter literally slides in from the side of the screen during the night, and All-Seeing Eye Flumpty will increase it. You get rid of him by flashing your camera at him. This night is about to get a lot more insane, I promise. Flumpty.exe replaces what the Red Man does from Flumpty's 2. Occasionally, a program will appear on your camera, and if you don't cancel it in time, then it's time for an ass-eating buffet. Shadow Flumpty works just how Grunkinky does in Flumpty's 1. The more you lower your camera, the further and further through positions he gets in your office. Lower it too many times, and he's gonna go spelunking in your asshole. I'm talking pounding ass pickles. Door Flumpty is where the 2 extra doors on your office come into play. He'll appear on either camera 8A or camera 8B. You can stop him by turning on your laser doors to keep him out. Also, you'll notice you have door power at the top of your screen, so you know, just something else you'll need to keep track of. Are you stressed yet? We're not done yet. While on your camera, sometimes you'll notice something really cool. Flumpty will fucking move the cameras 8A and 8B around to change which door that Door Flumpty attacks from. The first time I saw this while playing, I was freaking out. It's honestly such a cool idea that I've never seen done before. Finally, we have to talk about Virtual Boy Flumpty. Once 3 a.m. hits, if you look at your camera, you'll see a new section of the map that was never there before, slowly lower from the top of the screen and add 2 new cameras to the game for you to keep track of. I want you to keep in mind, all the other bullshit I've already mentioned is still happening right now. Virtual Boy Flumpty will make his way to camera 10, which you'll see has a door power switch. If you let Virtual Boy Flumpty get into this room, he will flip the switch, permanently turning off the laser doors you use to keep Door Flumpty out. So how do you stop Virtual Boy Flumpty? Well, this is really awesome. You have to close another set of doors on the fucking cameras. I swear to God I'm smoking crack, because this is insane. There is actually so much shit going on this night. It's so much fun to play once you get into a groove. This is something that Jonachrome does that not many other FNAF creators can replicate. Although all of this is happening at the same time, you will almost never feel like completing it is based on luck. Everything flows together so smoothly, it's just super fun to play. Midway through 4 a.m., a new song will start playing and the true boss fight begins. This final stretch is so much fun. When the song starts playing, you'll notice every single bit of your UI start to change to completely random intervals constantly. However, all of the systems still work. Sure, you can't visually see where your thermometer is at, but it's still decreasing and you will still have to manage it. Flumpty sings a little song, and if you manage to get to 6 a.m., the game truly ends. We get one last final cutscene where Flumpty finally lets us leave, and we see what the world has become while we've been trapped with him. Nothing but a wasteland, and we begin to question if escaping was even worth it at all. and the One Night at Flumpty's universe comes to a close. One Night at Flumpty's was one of the earliest FNAF fan games made, and I personally think it still holds up as one of the best in the world. Each game got better than the last, which is something that sadly doesn't happen with most series. I'm very glad that Dxtr had such good attention to detail to make sure that the games never got stale. As much as I'd love to see more games from the Flumpty's franchise, I think it's best that 3 remains the final game, and I think Dxtr thinks that way too. Flumpty's 3 finally showed us the extent of Flumpty's power with an amazing boss battle at the end, and he even honored his word by letting you leave once you beat him. This is such an incredible ending to such an incredible game, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think One Night at Flumpty's is as close to perfection as a FNAF game can be, and it truly shows. But of course, with the good comes the bad, and it's time to talk about Dxtr himself and the accusations that were thrown at him. 8 days after the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3, a user on Twitter posted a twit longer stating the following: "Hello, my name is unimportant in this matter, and I'd rather stay anonymous. I love this community. I absolutely have been a part of the FNAF fandom ever since 2014. The point of this is to try to make it safer for everyone and minors. Don't go attacking Scott over this. He had absolutely no way of knowing who Dxtr really is. I also strongly insist that minors stay within their age groups when meeting friends in the same fandom online, whether artists or not. With that said, this is my testimony coming clean about Dxtr. After seeing the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3 and how Dxtr has insisted on staying within the community and fanverse, I cannot stand by and allow him to continue being within this fandom, and I really should have come forward much earlier when I initially found out. I was involved with plenty of his group DMs from 2016 to 2018. A girl by the name of Emily was 13 to 14 at the time, and he came all out about his relationship with her. Within group DMs we've had, Dxtr was already in his 20s. Charges cannot be pressed as Emily would need to do it herself as she would now be 19. I have evidence to prove this with links to all of it, and witness statements, and messages from Dxtr himself. This man should not be praised at all, and I hope this helps people see him for what he really is, and why he should be removed altogether from any community he has a high stance in. It can be gathered that Dxtr stated he was dating this girl, but was not going to do anything sexual until she was of legal age, which some would constitute as grooming. In my personal opinion, none of that is as damning as John's own messages. In one message, he flat out admits his plan to marry Emily, who, keep in mind, is a child. Dxtr also mentioned how they'd been dating for 2.5 years, and considering how she had her date of birth set at 2002, this would have made her about 14 years old when they started dating. It's also very clear that Dxtr knew that what he was doing was wrong, as in 2017 he was very concerned about the net neutrality laws, which he thought would cause conflict with his being able to communicate with her. The twitlonger wasn't up for long when Dxtr responded. The title of his response stated that both he and Emily knew that this would happen at one time or another. His response reads, "Well, if my statement means anything, here it goes. I'm not a child groomer and I'm not a pedophile. Plain and simple. I wouldn't dream of manipulating, abusing, or exploiting anyone, much less minors. And the twitlonger has no evidence to suggest that I did. It comes across as spiteful to me more than it comes across as a post made out of legitimate concern for anyone's safety. That said, I can't deny that the screenshots are real. When Emily and I met, dating wasn't even a consideration for obvious reason. We were friends who got along really well. My first relationship was with someone my age, which only lasted a few months because we didn't communicate very well. That was when I started questioning what was really important in a relationship and what actually makes two people compatible. I realized that Emily and I share the same religious beliefs, we have similar sense of humor, there's a lot of overlap in our interests and hobbies, and we could both comfortably talk about a lot of things. We both felt like maybe we were meant to be together and were just born at the wrong times. We started talking, making it clear right away that there would be nothing sexual about our conversations and that we wouldn't meet in person until she was at least 18. We enjoyed each other's company, just talking and hanging out. Occasionally we'd watch movies together. For a long time, I didn't see the harm in it. I always put her needs before my own, always claiming to do what was best for her, and in a way, I thought I was saving her from experiencing the same heartbreak I did. This year, 2021, would have been the year we met in person, with her age at 19. But this was also when I learned she was starting to have doubts about our relationship. She knew I didn't mean any harm, while also saying I had effectively prevented her from exploring other romantic options by approaching her when I did. I'd like to say I knew better, but until that moment, I kinda didn't. I'd thought I'd done everything right, and I gambled on the assumption that if we were meant to be together, it wouldn't have mattered in several more years. But the reality is, I didn't give her enough time to grow, and I shouldn't have even entertained the idea. It's a mistake I've made the one time, and I'll never make it again for as long as I live. For anyone who wishes to hear the victim side of the story, Emily and I are on good terms, and she's planning on making her own response to this as soon as she can. Regardless, I was wrong for pursuing a relationship with her. I can't change the past, but I hope that my story can at least serve as an example for others. Please, whether you're an adult or a minor, don't make the same mistake I did. You might have the best intentions and the utmost confidence in a potential relationship with someone out of your age range, and you might not see any red flags, but that's no excuse. It's not worth it. Minors should be especially careful in an online space because there are people out there who want to take advantage of it. This could have ended a lot worse. Stay safe. Later after that, Emily responded herself, and her response reads, Jonachrome is not guiltless in this, as I'm an adult now, I'm completely aware of that. But he is genuinely a kind-hearted person who just did something to himself that he shouldn't have. As a minor at the time, of course I was super dumb and naive, but as an adult, Jonachrome was 100% responsible for his action. He has apologized to me several times, and I truly still believe he's a good person. We even talk on good terms even though we're separate. But he has recognized that he fucked up. So please, as the victim, leave the man alone. Let me clarify. He has never tried to solicit anything from me. He has never asked me to do anything I didn't want to. It was not good to consider us having a romantic relationship when I was very explicitly not old enough. But keep in mind, we've always been friends. Jonachrome is easygoing, fun to talk to. We used to watch movies together and talk about what we liked about them. We used to draw cute pictures for each other. We used to talk about the games we'd like. Morally, it was wrong to have romance between us, but it was innocent too. To say that it was grooming is where it becomes gray, because I feel like it was definitely unintentional somehow. That sounds like I'm confused, but I know why that is. If he had malice intent, he would have been much more persistent than he was. But no, he's not dangerous whatsoever. If Jonachrome attempts something like this again, yeah, I don't think I could trust him. He has done something awful, but that doesn't mean he himself is awful. What matters is how he moves on. If he's learned from this to know not to go any further from what he did to me. I was the one who confronted him about how a relationship would cause too many problems as an adult, and that's why I broke ties. Over those 6 years, I can say confidently that I care about the man's well-being. I don't want him to suffer. Let me say this again. Legally, he has not committed any crime. He's shown no clear intent to harm me, nor has he sent any harmful content to a minor. He is innocent in that respect, but that doesn't mean I'm excusing it. I'm just saying I, the victim, am okay. I'm also aware that no sexual stuff until legal is wrong and gross, because that does constitute as grooming. But there was still genuinely a relationship between us. Not romantically, but a friendship that we had. I can confidently say Jonachrome was a good friend. Yes, there was romance. It wasn't good by any means. He and I both knew there was something wrong with it, but I tried to pretend that it wasn't there. But please do not harass him. I can tell he's doing better because he talked to me before this mess got out. As for the person who exposed Jonachrome, I do not wish to be involved in this. I do not care about this anymore. I've moved on and so has he. If I am his only victim, then don't make any more accusations. I know this situation better than anyone. To everyone, don't say, I'm sorry this happened to you, because Jonachrome is already sorry, and to me, that's enough. I don't need your sympathy. Spread my response so people know what actually happened. As an adult, I'm not pressing any charges against Jonachrome, and I truly hope he's living his best life. He's been seeking therapy, and I do hope he'll make it out alive in this. His multiple apologies to me are proof of his self-improvement. I'm hoping this is enough. I do not want to make another statement, and frankly, I'm pissed that it even came out because he's hopefully not going to do this again, and I'm not traumatized from it. If he does it again, go ahead, talk about it. Otherwise, leave us alone. Jonachrome eventually made one more statement, which is way too long for me to cover in this video, but he basically says that he didn't groom Emily, because grooming requires sexual intent, which he claims he never had while in the relationship. John had been gone for years, but has actually, as of writing this, released a video on his gaming channel 3 weeks ago. He says he's been in therapy and is looking forward to working on more projects. As far as I'm aware, we still haven't heard from Emily or the anonymous person who brought this to light, but everyone has seemed to move on and they have accepted their faults and took accountability. While what Jonachrome did was wrong, no doubt about it, I truly think he's good at heart. I, and many others, all hope that this was a one-time thing. and I hope that this was a very clear wake-up call to never do something like this again, and it appears that that is the case. I and many others are excited to see what Jonachrome has in store for us, even if it has nothing to do with the One Night at Flumpty's series. One Night at Flumpty's is truly an amazing game, made by someone with a regrettable past. Even if you choose to not follow Jonachrome anymore, these games are a perfect example of being able to separate the art from the artist, and recognize that Jonachrome made some terrible decisions, but at the end of the day, the work he produced is something that will likely never be able to be replicated again. Depravity. Something that plagues several corners of the internet. Whether you like to think about it or not, disgusting people lurk everywhere. They're in every community, interacting with countless people, and in the worst cases, interacting with minors. They corrupt even the most wholesome of communities and snake their way into people's trust. But even the slimiest of snakes get the light shined on their dark desires eventually. And while it may hurt people knowing that someone they looked up to or someone who created something they really enjoyed were one of these snakes, it's always important to remember, though, that a bad apple doesn't always spoil the whole orchard. Today, we'll be talking about an incredibly infamous game in the Five Nights at Freddy's community. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to speak about it, but I and many other sensible people are capable of separating the art from the artist, and are plenty capable of commenting and criticizing a piece of media without attaching its creator to it. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. Towards the end of this video, I will also be talking about the creator of this game to give you a better understanding of what he was like before he seemingly left the internet. If things are about to get uncomfortable or depraved, I will give ample warning before we talk about said subjects. But in general, viewer discretion is advised. Come with me as we dive into the sick and depraved world of Dormitibus. But before we talk about the disgusting story of this game that would make most normal people want to throw up, we first have to talk about the actual gameplay, which I'll tell you is definitely something. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's actually good. There's no better place to start than Night 1, which I will mention, Dormitibus takes a different approach to nights than most FNAF games. Generally speaking, FNAF games have 5 nights, corresponding to 1 work week on the job, with a typical 6th day of overtime and 7th optional night to round out the week. Since in Dormitibus we play as a character who isn't actually working anywhere, Dormitibus is not tied to a typical week, instead having 10 nights rather than the typical 6. So let's dive right into Night 1. Let's start by talking about this goofy-ass office. You can travel from one side of the office to the other. One side of the office lets you look at your cameras, and the other side of the office has literally fucking nothing. But I'll go over why the useless side of the office is technically not useless in a moment. Another question you may have is, why the hell do we run under the table to get to the other side of the room when there's plenty of space on both sides of the table to walk around? Now you see, the answer to that question is fuck you. But now let's actually talk about some animatronics. As usual, I will explain each animatronic as they're introduced into the game, and on Night 1, we only have one animatronic to deal with, that being Havoc Freddy. Try your best not to focus on these goofy-ass designs. They have their own charm, in a way. Havoc Freddy is one of the most simple characters in all of Dormitibus. Freddy will move throughout the cameras, slowly inching towards your office. He arrives at your left door, and when he does, you can turn to your left to double-check that he's there. You'll be able to see him peering in at you. When he's there, you'll need to run to the other side of the room. At that point, he will almost immediately go away. I have no idea why this scares him away. I guess he's brain dead, but I'm not going to complain about an easy mechanic. Fun fact, you can actually make this mechanic even easier by never even checking if Freddy is at your door. Freddy makes a very noticeable sound cue when he arrives at your door, that being the sound of a door creaking directly in your left ear. I wonder if the other animatronics will be any harder. As mentioned, Havoc Freddy is the only enemy in Night 1, so beating it should be a cakewalk. What does Night 2 have in store? Well, Night 2 doesn't have Havoc Freddy present, and this is where I want to bring up something about this game that I actually think is pretty cool. In most FNAF games, as the nights go on, more and more animatronics will be added, and on top of that, they will become more and more aggressive. Dormitibus takes a different approach. Because of how many characters there are, it would not be possible to deal with all of them at once if their AI levels were super high. So instead, the game experiments with animatronic combinations, pairing a few animatronics together rather than throwing all of them at you at the same time, which I think is actually pretty cool. But for animatronics in Night 2, we have Havoc Chica and Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear. Let's start with Havoc Chica, as her mechanic is the easiest to deal with of the two. Havoc Chica is pretty much just a slightly more annoying version of Havoc Freddy, with one deep, cutting, wounding flaw that I'll get to later. Chica will move around the building and make her way to your right door. Once Chica gets to your door, you can turn to check if she's there, but like Freddy, she also makes a very obvious sound cue, that being laughing in your right ear. When Chica is at the door, all you need to do is run to the useless side of the room and stare at Chica. Once she leaves, you will have to very quickly run back to the camera side of the room. If you don't move back fast enough, Havoc Cupcake will have a feast with your yeast. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. Oh my god. Now it's time to talk about Am I Real? Am I Real moves around the cameras at random. Whenever he enters a new camera, he will audibly state which camera he moved to. Once you hear him say a camera, you will have to switch to that camera and check which form he's in. Am I Real has two possible forms, one form being Am I Real, a gross Springtrap looking design, and the other form being Cake Bear, a much more normal Freddy looking design. If you check the camera and see Cake Bear, you're free to continue playing the game as usual, no call for alarm. However, if you check the camera and you see Am I Real, you will have to stay and stare at that camera for what can feel like at times an entire minute, until Am I Real turns back into Cake Bear. Now, this may sound scary, especially when you think about the fact that in order to run to the other side of the room to avoid Havoc Chica and Freddy, you have to turn the cameras off. But the game knew this would be a problem, so when you shut the cameras off to move to the other side of the room, it will still count as you staring at that camera, meaning that Am I Real will still turn back to Cake Bear even if you're on the other side of the room, as long as the last camera you were looking at was Am I Real's. If you don't watch Am I Real, he will appear at your right door, and once he's there, there's nothing you can do to stop him from giving you a rough spanking that a lot of you freaks will really like. If you can manage all of that, then congratulations! You're ready to move on to Night 3. Night 3 uses Havoc Freddy, Am I Real, and two new characters, Soul Cage and Molten Evil. I'll cover Molten Evil first. Molten Evil will only ever appear in your office. When you see him, he will start to cover your screen with blue plasma. Once this plasma is on your screen, you will have to play dead by looking up at the ceiling. Don't ask, I know it doesn't make any sense, but just pretend like it does for me. After looking at the ceiling for long enough, the plasma will go away and you'll be safe to look down again. If you look up before the plasma is on your screen, Molten Evil will wait until you look back down before putting the plasma on your screen. So looking up early really only just stalls him. Soul Cage is somewhat similar in a way. Soul Cage will move around the cameras and slowly piece itself together. Once it's put together fully, it will make its way to your right door. Once he arrives, he too will play a sound cue to let you know he's there. When he does, you'll have to look over at him. Afterwards, he'll enter your office and move up onto your ceiling. In order to get him to leave, all you have to do is stare up at the ceiling at him until he goes away. If you haven't noticed yet, every single character can be dealt with by staring at them. And if you're hoping that the other characters will be different, most of them will cause you to be sorely disappointed. Hate to break it to you. Wait, who am I kidding? I love breaking bad news. Night 4 only introduces one new character, but the returning characters are Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, and Am I Real. The new character is Havoc Puppet. Havoc Puppet moves around the cameras and makes its way to your back window, which is located right behind your computer. Once Havoc Puppet appears in your window, it will make a very noticeable sound cue. At that point, all you have to do is turn around to your window and stare at it until it goes away. Are you starting to notice a possible game mechanic flaw with Dormitibus? Literally every character is answered by looking at them, and that's literally it. Hopefully, we get a new character soon that's at least a little different. Holy fucking shit, this new character is bullshit. Okay, let's take a step back and relax for a second. Every character up until this point has been Baby Caca easy mode. Night 5 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Am I Real, and the two brand new Wombo combo, Havoc Foxy and Golden Call. Havoc Foxy and Golden Call are pretty much one and the same, as one of them really can't work without the other. Havoc Foxy is on camera 5, something I thought was weird because the phone guy on this night says that he's on camera 4, which is just flat out wrong, but let's move past that. Havoc Foxy has 3 phases on his camera, which the final has Foxy standing out of his curtains. You can slow down Foxy by watching his camera. and this will become very important because you want to avoid his third phase as much as you can. However, this can prove difficult because of one character I'm sure you've already thought about, Am I Real? With Am I Real hogging most of your camera time, Foxy is free to buttfuck you as much as he wants. Once Foxy reaches phase 3, Golden Call comes into play. After reaching phase 3, Golden Call will send a voicemail to your computer with a Trojan virus attached. In order to remove the Trojan, you'll have to type in a password. How do you get the password? Well, this is when phase 3 Foxy becomes important. While in phase 3, Foxy will be holding a sign with the randomly generated phrase on it. You'll have to read the phrase on the sign and find the longest word. The longest word will be the password you need to get rid of the Trojan. Once you remove the Trojan, you will have to very quickly run to the other side of the office and watch the right side door as Foxy will soon be approaching. Once Foxy peers in, all you have to do is stare at him until he goes away. Afterwards, you'll be free to go back to your cameras and resume business as usual. Congrats! You've successfully survived a Golden Call attack. Are you stressed? Well, you should be, because you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Again, the real problem with Havoc Foxy and Golden Call isn't really their mechanics. That's fine. The problem really comes down to Am I Real? Again, Am I Real constantly requires your attention as he moves around the cameras often. Just by himself, he'll take away from your time stalling Foxy, and once you get a Trojan, you'll have to stop looking at Am I Real to find the password. But not watching Am I Real will get you killed really easily. Generally speaking, from my experience, you want to drop everything for Golden Call, get the password in as fast as you can, quickly switch back to Am I Real's camera before running to the other side of the room to watch Foxy. I feel like this will give you the most success. Night 6 includes Havoc Foxy, Havoc Chica, Molten Evil, and Am I Real. While that alone may sound like a very unfun time, just wait until I introduce the next most frustrating character on the planet, the BOA, or as I like to call it, Boa, aka Boa Bitch Boy. Boa starts in a box on the cameras and slowly emerges from it, afterwards making its way to your right door. Once there, it will give you a sound cue. When you hear it, you will need to quickly move to the other side of the room. Something pretty interesting about Boa is that he actually speaks to you. If you run into the other side of the room, Boa says this. Once you get to the other side of the office, just like most characters, all you have to do is look at it. You might be wondering why this character is so frustrating if he acts exactly the same as Havoc Chica. Well, the answer to that question is simple. Boa Bitch Boy sits at your door for approximately 17 years, and that number came from countless hours of crunching the numbers, analyzing algorithms. I promise it's very accurate. That's seriously why Boa is such a difficult character to deal with. Mixed with all the other characters that require so much of your attention, having a character that requires double or maybe even triple the amount of time can feel like a purgatory. But if you can handle that, you'll be on to Night 7. Night 7 contains Soul Cage, Molten Evil, and the deadly Wombo combo of Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, and Am I Real. No new characters on this night, but I'm sure it's just so that players have some time to find some strategies that can fend off the Butthole Trilogy gang. Night 8 is where this game cranks the dial up to 1,000. While it introduces no new characters, the combo of characters present is enough to make any grown man cry. I know I did. Night 8 consists of Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Am I Real, and the icing on the cake, the Boa. This lineup of characters is actually so disgusting, I find it difficult to use vocabulary fitting enough to describe my disgust. I could dish out 100 vulgarities, and it still wouldn't be enough to portray the feeling of dread you get while trying to beat this night. The Wombo combo mixed with the Boa is already bad enough, but throw Freddy and Chica into the mix and you're itching for somebody to commit quintuple homicide on everybody in their domicile. This is probably the most infamous night in this entire game. There's a one-on-one boss fight on a later night, but that doesn't even compare to this bullshit. You want to know the main issue? The main issue is that this night is entirely dependent on luck. That's the worst part. Most people who play FNAF will tell you that luck is the most unenjoyable part of any FNAF game because it doesn't matter how much you practice. Your chances of winning is entirely dependent on whether or not the game decides to fuck you in the asshole. And for some unfortunate people who played this game soon after it released, had to deal with an absolutely foul bug. Remember when I said that Chica had a terrible flaw? This is the time where I get to explain that flaw to you, the viewer. Chica used to have an incredibly glaring bug, that being, you would hear Chica laugh, signaling for you to move to the other side of the office to stare at her. So you do, but as you turn to look at her, she won't be there. Moments later, Nightmare Cupcake would kill you, almost like you ignored Chica altogether, but you know you didn't, and she just didn't appear. This would happen incredibly frequently. Fun fact, it was actually this exact bug that made Dawko give up on this night and skip it. I can only imagine how incredibly frustrating it must have been for players to pour so much time into this night, get to 6 AM, only to then die because Chica decided she didn't want to work. Absolutely foul. I never had to deal with this bug, so it appears to not be a problem anymore, but let me know in the comments if you've experienced the problems with this Havoc Chica bug. If you can somehow manage to keep your sanity intact through night 8, then you can finally move on to night 9. And let me tell you, it will feel incredibly underwhelming because night 8 is so much harder. Night 9 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Molten Evil, and Am I Real? Can you figure out why this night is easier than the previous? Yeah, you're exactly right. It's because the boa isn't there to slam your dick in a car door. I don't have much to say about this night, honestly. The voice acting of the phone call is pretty questionable, but I'll talk more about the phone calls in a while. Night 10, however, I do have something to talk about. Remember how I said one of the nights in this game is a one-on-one boss fight? Yeah, this is that night. You go up against a character you haven't seen before named Garvey. Now, since Garvey is the only animatronic on this night, you may think it's going to be easy. And while I'd say it's still easier than night 8, it's definitely not easy by any means, so get that thought out of your head right now, bucko. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time that Garvey's mechanics are not technically difficult, but you'll understand why he's such a pain in the ass as this explanation goes on. Let's get one huge problem out of the way. You're only allowed to be looking at the cameras for a specific amount of time throughout the night. The more you look at the cameras, the darker your vision gets. It's definitely slow, but once it starts to get dark, you'll totally be able to tell. Garvey can attack from 3 different locations. Think of these locations as the left, the middle, and the right. Left and right are the most straightforward. You will have to listen for Garvey's laughter. This will give you a pretty clear indication of which side he's about to attack you from. At this point, you must open up the cameras. This is the part where I should mention that there's been a vent toggle button on the cameras this whole time. I never brought it up because it hasn't ever been important up until this point. After you pull up the camera and toggle the vents, you must click on the vent of the side Garvey is coming from. This will temporarily slow him down. At this time, you must very quickly run to the other side of the office and stare at the door he'll be coming from. Beating him to the door is key. You have to be staring at the door before Garvey peeks in, which can be challenging because you need to be fast. Like, really fucking fast. It will not feel remotely fair, but as you start to learn his speed, it will get slightly easier. Which, like, no fucking shit, that's how practice works. Insane that I have to explain to you how practicing works, and yet, here we are. Now, there will come a few times where you will hear his laughter in both of your ears. At this time, all you have to do is look straight up at the ceiling. You'll be able to see him staring back at you. Keep staring until he disappears, and you'll be good to continue. Honestly, the best part of this night is that you don't have to deal with Golden Call. God fucking damn, I hate that stupid ass animatronic bitch. But if you can manage to hunker down and deal with all of the garbage for long enough, you'll be able to beat night 10. But what happens then? Well, a cutscene plays. At our desk, we will be able to see a heart on the table for some reason. As we're confused, wondering why it's there, Garvey shatters the window behind us and begins chasing us through the building. We get trapped near a door and enter one final spacebar mashing minigame. The screen cuts to black and we're shown a gravestone of a John Wright, stating brat, scum, waste of air. So, that might seem confusing to you. So I suppose it's time I explain a bit about the lore, huh? Bear with me, as this is not one of my strong suits. So that John Wright on the tombstone is us. We've been playing as John Wright, as is mentioned in the Night 1 phone call. A man by the name of Peter is the phone guy, and he's the one calling us throughout the nights. He claims he used to be a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's. On Night 1, Peter explains that we're dead and in a sort of purgatory, with several monsters roaming the buildings. And these monsters are supposedly our childhood friends. The reason why we're in a Freddy Fazbear's-like location is because our mind shapes the purgatory based off of the things we've seen. which could suggest we either worked at a Fazbear's location before or at least have a strong tie to one. Peter says we can escape this purgatory, but he needs our help. He says to grab an audio tape that should be on the desk next to the fan. This is also where we learn that there is a tape that we need to collect on each night. All tapes, aside from the first, will appear randomly on one of the cameras, and I'll get into these tapes later. On night 2, Peter explains his theories about why we're being hunted by the animatronics. He believes that someone or something tried to manifest these ghosts into physical bodies. That attempt clearly failed, which is why all of the characters look so fucked. Peter believes that because we are ghosts, we have a plasma of sorts that the animatronics need to survive, and that's why they're trying to eat us up like a gourmet steak. We don't get the next meaningful piece of information from Peter until night 5, where he tells us that Golden Call is his own physical remains. That means we've identified one of the animatronics trying to attack us, and we'll soon be able to find out who everyone else is as well, but we can cover that later. Peter tells us that the tapes we've been collecting are memories from our traumatic childhood. Peter mentions how an ominous key is also on these tapes, and I'm willing to bet that this key is Garvey. Peter thinks that collecting all of these tapes will allow our friends to move on and become regular ghosts, not being trapped in this purgatory with us anymore. On night 6, Peter explains to us that he has tapes too in his version of the purgatory, and that both his memories and ours are in one way or another tied to Freddy's locations. He says he missed a few of his tapes because you only get one attempt. The first 10 days in the purgatory decide your fate. Missing one tape is the difference between a chance at escape and spending eternity fending off your suffering dead friends stuck inside of robotic bodies. Peter begs us to collect the tapes and free everyone because he can't anymore. On night 7, Peter says the animatronic sleep cycles are all out of whack. He's been doing this for years while stuck here and was able to find a pattern with their sleep cycles. But out of nowhere, once we came here, those cycles started to change for some reason. Peter mentions he found a key and tried to use it on the exit door, but it didn't work. He says he'll update us as soon as he can. On night 8, we get some pretty crucial information. Peter has found another key, and he believes something may happen soon. He says we probably don't have any keys in our purgatory because he thinks the keys are linked to a specific trauma he suffered. He also thinks he knows why the animatronic sleep cycles are messed up. Apparently, we brought something into this world, and it's big, with loud footsteps causing the characters to wake up when they're not supposed to. Peter says that if this thing we brought in is what he thinks it is, that we're all sorts of fucked. And of course, knowing what we already know, we can take a pretty good guess at who that might be. Night 9 is where we get to hear Peter's final moments. The monster we let enter this world is exactly who Peter thought it was. Garvey. Garvey has been tearing all of the monsters in Peter's purgatory into pieces. Peter knows that we apparently know who Garvey is. He tells us he's hiding behind the curtains where Foxy is, and that Garvey is coming for him. He tells us to get the keys, and the call ends. The 2 keys he's mentioned can be found. The first on night 10 in the same location where you find the tape on camera 5. The second key requires me to tell you about a night I have yet to mention, night 11, aka Nightmare. No matter how good you are at FNAF games, nothing will prepare you for just how surprisingly difficult this night really is. They cranked the AI for these characters on this night up to 10,000. Holy shit, it's insane. From 10 a.m. to 5 a.m., you go up against Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Havoc Puppet, Golden Call, The Boa, Soul Cage, and Molten Evil all at the same time. This has to be one of the most stressful challenges I've ever attempted. It is ridiculous. The sheer speed you have to even get close to beating this night is ridiculous. You quite literally have no time to rest for even a second. There is constantly something happening, and it's enough to give any grown adult a seizure and kill them instantly. But that's not even the worst part, no. The worst part comes at 5 a.m., when Garvey comes and kills everyone, and you're yet again thrown into a final, even more difficult Garvey boss fight for the last 2 hours of the night. If you thought he was quick before, boy, you better be Usain Bolt, because you need to be double in your speed. It is insane how fast you really have to be if you want to be able to complete this night. But if you can manage to beat this night while grabbing the second key that's on camera 8, congrats! You're almost ready to achieve the good ending. There are a few prerequisites required to get the good ending. The first is getting the 2 keys. Check. The second is collecting all of the tapes. Check. The third is beating Night 11. Check. The fourth is listening to the 10th tape. Come to think of it, we actually haven't dove into the tapes yet, so we'll do that now. But here's that warning I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The topics that take place in these tapes are highly disturbing and are one of the main reasons why this game is so controversial. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. The 10 tapes you collect throughout Dormitibus tell the story of Garvey Wright, John Wright's, our character's, brother. The tapes go over Garvey's plan to murder several children and stuff them into the suits in his father's establishment. There's another minigame you can play in Dormitibus called Cardboard Theater, where you play as Garvey and live out a few of the scenarios mentioned in these tapes. Not only did Garvey murder several children, he also murdered his brother Peter. Yes, the same Peter who was calling us throughout the game. In the Cardboard Theater, we get to watch the spring lock failure happen to Garvey before he has the chance to kill John and leave no witnesses. Garvey's father soon sells the Cake Bear establishments because of the controversy, and it gets bought and turned into what we now know as Freddy Fazbear's. John gets a job at the Fazbear Fright location from Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and goes head-to-head with his brother, who in this game's story basically took William Afton's place as Springtrap. And as you know if you've played FNAF 3, John burns the building down and kills himself as well. After his death is where Dormitibus takes place. By collecting the tapes, collecting the keys, and beating Cardboard Theater, John is able to send Garvey to hell while setting the rest of the spirits of his dead friends and brother free. Dxtr, that sounds pretty normal for a FNAF-style game, I hear you saying. Why did you tell me that viewer discretion was advised? Well, that's because of the contents of Tape 3, and a specific news clipping that you see near the end of the game. In Cardboard Theater, you will need to recollect the 2 keys you collected before while playing. At the end of this minigame, Cake Bears will be unlocked, acting as the final 12th night of Dormitibus. The only 2 characters present in this night are Cake Bear and Havoc Puppet. I won't spend too much time explaining this night since you only ever have to beat it once. Cake Bear will move around the map and make it to your desk. You can stall him by lighting the candle on his cake, but I'm not sure if I'd actually do that because it drains power. Once he gets super close to your desk, quickly pull up the camera and he should go away. Havoc Puppet can appear randomly on any camera and will block your view. Since watching Cake Bear is essential, you'll want to get rid of the puppet. Simply staring at the puppet will cause it to go away, but sitting in the cameras will cause the battery to drain incredibly quickly, so it's best to wait until the battery is fully charged before dealing with him. If the battery goes dead, Havoc Puppet will disable it, which will lead to an inevitable death to Cake Bear. After beating Night 12, you'll be greeted to the FNAF 4 box. You must use the 2 keys you've collected to open it, and several news clippings will be given to you, each detailing the gruesome murders of some of the children at the hands of Garvey. But I'll cover them in just a moment. Back to the tapes. I referenced Tape 3 being the most alarming of all of them. Rather than explain it to you, I'll just play it.
My god! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kids' friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun. She's in one of the suits now. Just a little more time until Fredbear's is going down as well. But hey, I'll find my ways to catch her at the others.
You may have a good idea as to what Garvey is referencing doing in this tape, but if you need any clarification, one of the news clippings will confirm your suspicions. It reads, "The Fredbear's establishment in town was recently closed because of an accident with the animatronical characters. The CEO is now selling the franchise just like the previous owner did. The dirt that has been shed onto the establishment increased even more, as the police found the remains of a 15-year-old female in the back of the establishment, stuffed into a suit. She was supposedly raped to death by a yet unknown killer. Connections to the incident at the previous establishment are already being drawn." This clipping right here, mixed with the excitement in the voice of Garvey in Tape 3, is the sole reason why this game is so hated and is so disgusting. Almost everybody agrees that throwing rape into this story was completely unnecessary. Some may argue that depraved people will do depraved things like this, and it's odd to not acknowledge that terrible things like this really happen. And to a point, I understand your thought process. But to feel the need to add it to a game that will most definitely be played by children with no prior warning is insane. And it gets even worse when you dive into the person who made the decision to put this into the story, Blackout. Blackout has since left the internet, but a while after Dormitibus released, one of the members of the Radiance team responsible for games such as Treasure Island and Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted posted an unlisted YouTube video going over Blackout's messages of harassment towards them. Soon after that video followed a Google document surfacing regarding Blackout's behavior, regarding joking about raping people, being hateful towards trans people, and a laundry list of other terrible things. But the most egregious thing that Blackout has done was the Discord messages that were released revealing him to have been grooming a 12-year-old girl, making jokes about Germany's lax age of consent laws, and at one point even sending nudes to this child, this 12-year-old girl. After all of this unfolded, Blackout went on a hate brigade full of harassment and eventually left the internet, thanking his supporters that he for some reason thought he had. Now going to his Game Jolt page reads one message. Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye. And with that, that's where the story of Dormitibus ends. A game that could have been something amazing, with a story that was really promising, soiled and ruined by a disgusting, perverted pedophile. Again, I encourage everyone to try their best to separate the art from the artist, but if you can't do that, then I'd recommend checking out the remake of Dormitibus that was made by some very talented creators if you're still interested in seeing what this game has to offer, minus all of the disgusting and unnecessary perversions. But let me know what you think. Taking out the disturbing lore and separating Blackout from it, what do you think about the gameplay of Dormitibus? Do you really like it, or do you feel like it's pretty lazy? I'm interested to hear what you all have to say. The question of this video is, what is a cancelled FNAF game that you'd like to see brought back and finished? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!